The story starts off in an emergency room of a hospital, where an assistant worriedly tells the doctor that the patient is having trouble breathing. The doctor tells the assistant to give him the ventilator as he continues operating on the patient, while the patient faintly retains consciousness, thinking that his name is Jin Leshan and he's a mechanical engineer. Due to overworking, his heart suffered a stroke and now he's about to die. He recalls that soon after birth, his parents died in a car crash and he became an orphan. After graduating, he spent 20 years in the company, living a nightmare with extremely low pay. Jin sadly understands that he was single for his whole life and has never held a girl's hand. Right then, the doctor desperately calls him and asks if he can hear him, while Jin wonders what the point is of a life like this. The doctor keeps on calling his name, but Jin Leshan doesn't open his eyes, so finding no other choice, the doctor tells his assistant to use the AED immediately. At that moment, Jin thinks he feels so tired, so he'll just sleep for now as he continues to lose consciousness and dies. Some time later, he opens his eyes and finds himself lying on a bed in a really luxurious room. Jin looks at the room, wondering if this is the hospital, as how much a luxurious room like this would cost. Right then, he gets startled to find a window pop up in front of him, floating in air, welcoming him to the magical continent, Eldora. Jin tries to raise his hand up to the window, wondering what this is, but he finds his head hurting. Then he looks to the side, questioning what's happening. However, he gets shocked by what he sees. He looks at a mirror beside his bed and finds that his body is completely changed, so he confusedly wonders what's going on and why he looks like that. A week later, as he sits at his office, a maid enters the room, calling him Master Rain, and tells him that his tea is ready. Rain thanks her for that, calling her Lee, while thinking that after a week or so, he has understood his new position. He has died and become this man called Rain Edgar. Rain Edgar is the third son of Grand Duke Aldarian Edgar, and he has a brother and a sister. Both of them love him dearly, as he remembers his brother offering him some food, telling him to eat this, so as not to starve himself as his body grows. Also offering a magic water which he spent a lot on, that can increase his magic strength, while his sister feeding him with her own hand, and Rain enjoying their pampering. Rain remembers his mom also loving him a lot, as he recalls her showing him a jacket and telling him that this is the new jacket she made, to try and see if it fits. He understands that Rain Edgar is the smallest child of the family and therefore adored by everyone. So he finds himself lost in thought, wondering if this is some sort of remedy for his terrible last life. Also, Jin understands that this continent is called Eldria, a world where all facilities rely on magic to function, and the Caradorial Empire is the largest human empire in this continent. On the continent, there are not only human nations but also of other races, such as elves and dwarves. Jin knows that the Edgar family is a noble family with a territory of about 300,000 square kilometers and roughly 1 million subjects. As Lee pours tea for him, Jin finds that as a noble, not only does he have fine clothes, but he also has a personal maid to serve him. So he excitedly thinks that living such a happy life must be the result of his hard work in his past life. After that, Lee tells Rain that the Lord has something to discuss with him, so she requests him to go with her. A while later, at Rain's father's office, a butler stands at the door and informs the Lord that young Master Rain has arrived. The Lord tells him to let him in, and the butler says yes. Then Rain enters the office and bows before his father, telling him that he's there. His father, Aldarian Edgar, asks Rain if he knows why he called him for. Jin understands that this is his father, and also the lord of this land. He nervously tells him no. He doesn't know. Then his father tells him that he has reached the age to manage his own territory. So he asks if he has decided where he'd like to go. Rain gets surprised to hear that and asks if he's talking about inheriting a territory, and Aldarian stressfully says of course. He gets up and walks up to a map of the continent, telling him that the territory he's going to take over in the future is in the northeast. He explains that while it's relatively safe due to the shortage of magicians, the issue of food production has been difficult to resolve. So Aldarian tells Rain with a serious look on his face that although their land is currently secure, the future of the Caradorial Empire is not so optimistic. Rain worriedly thinks indeed, what his father said is very true. The royal family of the Caradorial Empire is in decline, and political corruption is rampant. He also knows that open and covert conflicts between the Empire's various lords are countless. Rain understands that in this world, after his reincarnation, He has experienced care and concern like never before, so he decides that he'll never lose the people who care about him. Seeing his son lost in thought, Aldarion wonders if he's giving him too much pressure and tells him that he doesn't need to feel so pressured. His older brother, sister, and his father. But before he could finish his sentence, Rain hurriedly asks if the food problem is resolved, if the safety of the territory will improve. Aldarion says that food issues can't be solved with just enthusiasm, so he tells him to take it step by step. While he thinks, as expected, he's still just a child, thinking the problem is too simple. However, Rain thinks he's not relying on mere passion, but on the wisdom of centuries of human industrial revolution. So then, he tells his father with a determined look on his face to leave the food issue to him. Rain understands that the city of Iselin, the western land of Grand Duke Aldarion's territory, intersects with the enemy's Grand Duke Soren's territory in the north. In the west, it intersects with the territory of the elves, and to the south is the vast ocean. Because it's located at the junction of three countries, the city of Iselin is often swept by war. Rain also realizes that frequent wars also left the fertile land barren, and the population eventually dwindled, with the people living in poverty. As he heads to Iselin in a carriage along with his maid Lee, he goes through the reports and thinks that the necessary prerequisite for the Industrial Revolution is sufficient labor. Rain understands that they have to find a way to increase the population, but he frustratedly thinks one thing that surprised him was that he seems to have gained some ability. He finds a system pop up in front of him requesting him to use his detection ability on people. He has done 6 out of 10. Rain understands that through this ability, he can directly observe the ability of the person being detected. By detecting those in his family, he has a general understanding of talents in this world, as he can check people's individual stats, skills, and special attributes. So Rain annoyedly thinks it seems like after arriving at the territory, the first priority is to recruit talented people. However, Lee seems worried seeing him like that. She recalls Lord Aldarion requesting her to keep an eye on him and not let him do anything wrong in the territory, and Lee agreed to do that, so she hopes that Rain doesn't do anything reckless. Meanwhile, at the Iselin City Lord's mansion, the Lord says he heard that the Grand Duke's youngest son will come to his city that day. So he asks a shady person, with a mischievous look on his face, why they don't take the initiative. He explains to the person, it's said that not only is Grand Duke Aldarion very fond of his youngest son, but even his brother and sister love him dearly. However, the person tells him not to touch him for now, and to wait for the master's next instruction. But the city lord worriedly asks if he discovers that he falsified his financial and tax returns, what he should do. At that, the shady person giggles and asks how a pampered nobleman could understand financial and tax accounts. When that young master comes, he can just advise him some accounts to fool him. Then he gets up, saying well, that young master should be arriving soon, and tells the lord that it's time for him to go and greet him. The city lord says yes. After that, the shady person thinks about Aldarion, as it's time for him to pay for his crimes, and leaves the city lord's mansion. At the time, Rain gets out of the carriage and stands at the outskirts of the city, thinking just as he has thought. Due to the lack of population, the land that could have been used to grow food has become barren. So he tells Lee to show him the map of this area. Then, Lee brings out the map and hands it to him. Looking at the map, Rain thinks if they dredge the river on the west side and the ocean port on the south side to build a canal. Right then, he gets startled to hear a girl begging her father to stop gambling, and looks to the side. He finds a middle-aged man trying to take a pouch from a girl, and the girl not letting go of it, calling him father and requesting him not to go and gamble anymore. She cries and tells him with tears in her eyes that this money is for her mother's treatment. But the man furiously calls her a dog and tells her to quickly give him the money as he will make a comeback. He keeps on trying to forcibly take the money, telling his daughter to give it to him. He can definitely win this time. But the girl tells him no, the money is for her mother's treatment. Then, the man infuriatedly tells her to give him the money, or he will kill her, and is about to beat her. But right at that moment, Rain runs up to him and punches him right in the face hard, causing him to bleed and fall to the ground. However, because of that, his own hand gets swollen, and he finds it very hurting while Lee tends to it. She requests that the next time he wants to beat someone up, to tell her in advance and she'll prepare protective gear for him. Rain tells her that he acted impulsively, she didn't have time to prepare. Then he walks toward the man telling Lee to go check out on that girl's situation, as he'll go ask that scumbag. Lee says yes. After that, the girl's father looks up at Rain, as Rain infuriatedly asks if he actually uses his family's life-saving money to gamble, and he even beat up his own daughter, so if he's crazy. At that, the man frighteningly asks who he is. Rain puts his hands on the man's shoulders and tells him that who he is isn't important. What's important is, he explains to the man with a terrifying look on his face, if he hears that he went to gamble again, he will cut off his head, and asks if he understood. At that, the man runs away from there as fast as he can, crying and repeatedly telling Rain that he won't dare to do it again. He promises. Then Rain turns back to that guy's daughter, asking her with a smile if she's alright, and thinks he should use the system to check on her situation. The girl thanks him for saving her. Then she tells him that if the money to treat her mother was snatched away, she really wouldn't know what to do, and starts sobbing. While Rain gets surprised to see her stats, he thinks that although the values aren't high, this girl is a congenital farming saint. They must get this individual, the future of farming depends on her. So then, he tells her since she's going to the city to ask the doctor to treat her mother, he requests her to take their carriage. Since they're also going there, the girl asks how she can do that. She's so dirty, she'll make their carriage dirty, but Rain tells her it's just a means of transportation made of a few wooden boards. There's nothing dirty about it, and he just wants to ask her, which confuses the girl. As he asks with a serious look on his face, everyone is already so poor, and if there are still people who want to open casinos. Rain understands that last fall, the Grand Duke of their enemy country, Soren, attacked the town, causing many soldiers to die. Also, this spring, there was a great flood, destroying much of the land and crops. Because of all these, the lives of citizens have become hellish. Even finding a meal became troublesome. So, as Rain enters the city with Lee and the young girl, Lillian, he thinks he must run a census to know how much productive force they have. He decides to go to Iselin City Lord's estate first to see how much petty cash is lying around to use as development funds. So Rain asks Lilina if she knows where the Lord's estate is, and Lillian tries to tell him about it. But right at that moment, a guy comes rushing through the crowd on the street telling everyone to get lost, calling them peasants. He furiously tells everyone to get lost now, and as he gets really close to Rain, Lee hurriedly pushes her master out of the way, telling him to be careful. She manages to not let Rain get hit by the horse as the guy gallops past him, while continuously telling everyone to get lost. Lee keeps looking furiously at him as he keeps rushing away fast, but then she gets startled to hear Rain's muffled voice as he desperately tries to tell her to let go. He can't breathe. At that, Lee hurriedly lets go of him and worriedly asks if he's hurt, if he feels pain anywhere, while Rain coughs as he finally gets to breathe. Then he thanks her and tells her that he's okay. After that, he asks Lillian if she knows who the guy is. Lillian nervously tells him that that guy is the young master of the Edwin family, and all the casinos in Iselin City belong to their family. Rain asks with a smile if she's saying all the casinos in Iselin City, as they must be rich then, and Lillian stutteringly says yes. Rain excitedly thinks great. He was worried that he won't know where to get the development funds from. Then he tells Lillian to lead them to the casino. At that, Lillian worriedly tells him not to go there, as if he goes there all his money will be scammed away by the casino. However, Rain tells her not to worry, as the casino can't beat him. Lillian still seems worried for him, and as he walks forward, she wonders just how powerful this noble young master is. A while later, as they reach the casino, Rain looks at the place and thinks they should wait to get annihilated by his industrialized production line. After that, he enters the casino and finds tons of people, both rich and poor, busy gambling. As a person begs someone to lend him 10 gold coins, he promises he can make it back. Another person excitedly shouts, saying he won. But the others at the table he's playing against say no, it's impossible. Rain finds even more people shouting due to excitement as they won, but others sad because they lost, and thinks as long as casinos exist, people will never work properly. Right then, Lee whispers to him that the soldiers have surrounded the casino, so she asks if he wants to take action now. Rain walks forward, telling her that they should wait for the big fish first, and Lee says okay. After that, one of the hosts respectfully calls him sir and asks with a smile what he would like to play. Rain tells him he doesn't know, he's just playing around, so he asks if there's anything easy. The host asks him to follow him as he shows him to a table where people have already gathered to play, and the dealer calls for buy-in. The host offers Rain 2 chips, saying that these are on the house, and tells him that he can try his luck, which surprises him. Rain takes the chips and plays his hand by tossing them in the box for small. Seeing that, both the host and the dealer get really excited. Then the dealer rolls the dice and shouts, "Open, 466, that's larger," and the host tells Rain what a shame, he almost won. Rain disappointedly asks if that's it, and says this is no fun at all. Then he proceeds to leave, telling Lee and Lillian that they should go. He's hungry. However, the host hurriedly stands in his path and tells him to wait. He explains with an evil grin on his face that he can leave once he pays the money they owe them. Rain asks when he owed him any money, and the host tells him that he borrowed those 2 chips. He has to pay the money back first, but Rain asks if he didn't just say those were on the house. The host nods his head, telling him that he must be joking, calling him sir, as nothing is free there. He loudly states that each chip is worth 100 gold coins, but including the service charge and interest, he owes him 250 gold coins. And he excitedly adds that if he didn't bring enough cash that day, he can also leave his maid there instead. But right then, Lillian yells at him telling him to cut the crap, and he's a liar, which startles the host. Lillian tells Rain not to believe him, as each token is only worth 1 silver coin, so he's lying through his teeth. Hearing that, the host furiously asks where this bastard came from. How dare she ruin his plans, and calls for someone to come and beat her. However, at that moment, before he could finish his sentence, Rain punches him right in the face, throwing him at a poker table behind him, breaking it and causing the poker chips to fall on the ground. Then, Rain irritatedly asks who let him talk, and immediately, all the other gamblers get to the floor, trying to snatch as many chips as they can for themselves. One tries to take all of them, laughing and saying it's all his, and others tell him to move out and leave some for them. Seeing the commotion, Rain thinks these people are hopeless. Right then, the young master of the Edwin family arrives there, furiously asking who dares to mess in the casino. Hearing that, Rain turns back to see him and thinks with a smile on his face that the big fish is there. The young master of the Edwin family stands in front of the gamblers picking up the poker chips, which worries them. Then he orders the guards to beat them up to make these peasants know their place, and the guards say yes sir. At that, one of the gamblers requests them to stop, as they've learnt from their mistake. But the guards start beating them with large sticks. Another gambler also tells the guards that he has learnt from his mistakes and begs them to spare him, but the guards keep beating him, hurting him badly. The rest of the gamblers who still haven't gotten beaten up seem terrified looking at the young master, seeing his harsh treatment. Then the young master shouts at everyone, telling them to behave, or that'll be what happens to them. At that, Lillian hurriedly hides behind Lee and thinks it's her fault. If she hadn't brought them to a place like this, they wouldn't get scammed. However, she recalls Rain requesting the doctor to save her mother and he will pay the money, so she decides that she has to pay Big Brother back. For that reason, she tries her best to suppress her fear and steps forward, yelling at the young master that she won't allow him to scam Big Brother. At that, the gamblers worriedly wonder who this kid is. They think crap, it's over for her, as in Iselin City, not one person who made Veserlo mad had a good ending. Then, Veserlo turns around toward Lillian, calling her a kid, and infuriatedly asks if she has something to say to him. Lillian tells him that his casino scammed everyone. He destroyed countless families, but she can't let him bully her big brother and sister, they're good people. At that, Veserlo proceeds toward her in order to hit her, shouting at her to go die. And Lillian frighteningly closes her eyes, thinking she's going to get hit now. But then, she finds that she didn't get hit, so she slowly opens her eyes and gets surprised to see that Rain stopped Veserlo from hitting her by holding his hand. After that, Rain checks Veserlo's stats and finds that not only are his traits so bad, his loyalty score is only 5. He understands that this Eldrin family can start a revolt anytime, so he has to be careful. Veserlo looks at Rain and says he doesn't seem too fond of his ways either. Then Rain lets go of his hand and says no. He's very fond of his ways. Only the strong can survive in this world, so whoever wins the fight gets the final laugh. At that, Veserlo laughs and asks if yet he goes against him, as if he knows who he is. Rain tells him with a serious look on his face that he doesn't need to know who he is, he just needs to know one thing. As he claps his hands, and immediately, a bunch of soldiers enter the casino and stand behind him. Then Rain tells Veserlo that he wins the fight now, so he'll get the final laugh. His words are the law, which worries Veserlo. Later that day, most of the nobles are gathered at the city lord's mansion, as one says he hopes Master Rain can fancy his daughter, and another tells Mr. Lucas that he has made more money recently. Lucas says it's all thanks to the city lord, while a noble stands with a wine glass in hand, wondering if he wants to leech off the Grand Duke with his daughter. He recalls advising the city lord to scare Rain a little during the banquet that night, and the city lord said okay, so he thinks how naive he is. Right then, a noble lady walks up to him with a wine glass of her own and says a toast to him. The scheming noble cheers and thanks her for that. But as he enjoys the wine, he frustratedly thinks who knows where that Veserlo kid ran off to. If he's there, they can build a relationship with the Grand Duke's son and give himself some leeway. He looks at the city lord and understands that they can't trust the trash town's lord too much. Right at that moment, a guard announces that His Highness Rain Edgar has arrived. As Rain walks into the dining hall, immediately, two nobles run up to him. One tells him that he's the head of the Raven family and has brought some gifts that day, and another tells him he's the head of Roaster family, and he has brought his daughter over, so he requests him to take a look. However, Rain ignores them, asking if everyone is there already, so they should start, as some servants bring in a large whiteboard, which confuses the nobles. After the servants place the board in the room and Rain stands in front of it, the nobles see some diagrams on it and wonder what that is, as it looks like a house. Then, Rain points at the diagram and tells them that this is the blueprint he drew this afternoon of the dam. They'll make sure it's viable during its construction. Hearing that, the nobles confusedly look at each other as one whispers asking what a dam is, and another asks who knows if it's to catch fish. Seeing their clueless faces, Rain requests them not to worry as he will explain it now, and tells Lee to give him the map. Lee says okay and hands it to him. Then Rain explains to the nobles that he has taken a look at Iselin City's geographical location this afternoon. There's a great flood every year due to this river north of the city, so as long as they build a dam there, they can stop the floods during the rainy season and water their crops during the droughts. Vesserlo's father thinks it is an excellent idea. If they really can build this dam, the crop production of Iselin City will be improved greatly. It looks like this Grand Duke's son is no simple man. However, one of the other nobles asks Rain what this has to do with them, and Rain tells him that he needs money. All construction work needs money. Hearing that, the rest of the nobles seem dismissive of his plan, as one of them says that they're poor too, and others agree with him. Vesserlo's father thinks that although Rain is smart, he's also too naive. He wonders if he wants these vampires to fund him, as that won't work. But Rain tells them not to tell him that they're poor. He has a good way of making money. He has raided a casino and gotten about 50,000 gold coins. So he asks how many other casinos there are, if anyone knows. The corrupt nobles get shocked to hear that he raided the casino, and wonders if that doesn't mean that they won't get a share that month, and which casino he raided, as it better not be the one they invested in. But they nervously look at Vesserlo's father, thinking that Iselin City's casinos are all run by Master Adrian, so this young master is going to run into trouble. While looking at Rain, Adrian thinks what a stupid fellow. If he just stayed put, he probably wouldn't do anything to him. But since he's picked the fight, he'll destroy him. So then he walks up to Rain and tells him that his actions of raiding the casino breaks the laws of the Caradorial nation. Then other nobles agree with him, frustratedly telling Rain that he must not break the laws of Caradorial nation. That is not right. Master Adrian is right. They add that casinos are legal businesses, so he can't raid them just because he wants to, and ask how he can do that. Seeing all the pushback from the nobles, Adrian thinks that the young master is too naive. He doesn't know how to control people. But then, Rain tells them in a furious tone that they pretend to be poor when he asks for donations, and they're unwilling to make up for it. He explains that he knows everything about their involvement with the casinos, so he'll give them one last chance, as he calls in the soldiers and tells the nobles to either give it up now, or he'll give it up for them. Hearing that, Adrian warns Rain that if the Grand Duke knows about his actions there, he won't forgive him easily. The other nobles tell Rain yes, he must not mess around, and request him to know his place. However, Rain smiles, asking if they want to talk about the law, as that's great, and tells the soldiers to detain them all. He'll talk about the law with them that day. After that, Rain brings in two detained persons, which shocks Adrian as he wonders how come these two are there if they weren't always next to Vesserlo. Unless Adrian expects the worst. At that moment, Rain asks him if he recognizes these two. Adrian hurriedly tells him that he does not and never seen them before, and asks him what the meaning of this is. Then, Rain casually sits on a chair and tells him not to be alarmed, as it's no big deal. They simply tried to assassinate him this afternoon. He adds that come to think of it, they said that in the city of Iselin, their power could let them obscure the sky with a single hand, and that someone in Iselin had their back, which makes Adrian really nervous, and he starts sweating heavily. Then Rain tells one of the soldiers, right, to untie them, and see if there's anyone at the party who recognizes them. The soldier says understood, while the other nobles worriedly wonder if those two aren't Master Vesserlo's followers, and if Master Rain just said that they tried to assassinate him. So it looks like Mr. Adrian's luck ran out, and Adrian terrifiedly thinks if these two were allowed to speak, the entire family would be ruined. So then, he grabs a knife and hurriedly rushes toward the detained culprits, furiously asking how dare they attack the son of the Grand Duke, calling them scoundrels, and tells them to pay with their lives as he cuts off their throats with a swing of the knife, which shocks the other nobles. The two culprits fall to the ground, bleeding heavily, and die while Adrian drops the knife and stands there before them. Then he goes up to Rain and tells him that he was overtaken by anger and acted out of the place after hearing the assassination attempt, so he requests him to punish him as he sees fit. Rain pats him on the shoulder, saying that with such a strong sense of justice, Mr. Adrian is truly a great noble, and Adrian says Master Rain is too kind, he just did what he was supposed to do. Then Rain orders a soldier to bring out the main culprit, as they should see if there are more excellent nobles like Adrian at this party, which startles him, and the soldier says yes, my lord. After that, the soldiers bring Besserlo into the room, who's also tied up, and he furiously shouts at the soldiers to unhand him, calling them peasants. He adds that his dad is the greatest noble in all of Iselin, so once he's free, he'll get his dad to kill all of them. Seeing him like that, Adrian seems stunned, thinking he was captured. No wonder he couldn't find him. Then, Besserlo gets on his feet and walks up to Rain, furiously asking how dare he kill his servants, as he's so dead. He calls Rain a dogface and tells him that once he's free, he's going to get him and torture him. He'll make him wish he killed himself right now. But in response, Rain asks with a smile if he only wants to kill him, but also wants to torture him. Besserlo says exactly. He tells him no one as Iselin can stand against him. He said he's dead, then he's not going to live. Hearing that, Rain starts laughing, saying bravo, bravo, this is the first time he has met someone as brave as him. He looks at Adrian and asks if he doesn't think so too. Seeing him talk to his dad like that, Besserlo seems surprised. Then he too laughs and calls Rain a brat. He tells him that his days are numbered, as he asks if he doesn't know who he is. But before he could finish his sentence, Adrian yells at him, telling him to shut his mouth, calling him an ungrateful child, and to kneel this moment. Besserlo gets confused by that and asks his dad what's happening. At that, Adrian goes up to him and forces him onto the floor, shouting at him that he said to kneel right now. Then he worriedly tells Rain that his son is young and naive, so he begs him to spare him, and he's willing to give him everything in his possession. At that moment, Besserlo recalls his father telling him that Master Rain, the son of the Grand Duke, will arrive at the territory that day and take over, so to remember to get closer to him. So then, he stutteringly asks Rain if he's the Grand Duke's son, and Rain proudly asks why else he would have so many soldiers. Immediately, Besserlo bows before him so low that he bashes his head onto the floor and begs Rain to spare him, as he has made a terrible mistake, and he won't do it again. Adrain also requests Rain to give the Eldwin family an opportunity, and kneels before him, telling him that the Eldwin family pledges their lives to him. So then, Rain tells them to hand over everything they earned illegally over the years, and he will ensure their safety. Adrian keeps thanking him for that, calling him Master Rain, and seems a bit relieved thinking he's saved. Then he looks at the city lord, frustratedly thinking, this man, he must let Master Rain know. So he hurriedly tells Rain that he has something to report. The city lord Eldrick has contacted exterior forces in an attempt to betray the Grand Duke. Hearing that, the other nobles there turn toward the city lord, surprisedly wondering what if the city lord wants to rebel. Adrian tries to tell Rain something more, but then Rain yells at him, calling him and his son bastards. He says that he was going to let them go, and yet there he is, slandering the lord and speaking ill of his loyalty, so he orders the soldier to execute them, spouting nonsense immediately, and the soldiers say yes lord. At that, Eldrick excitedly thinks it's exactly like that master said. This young master is not only stupid, but also impulsive. He bows before Rain and tells him that his quick wit and action are greatly appreciated. He adds with a wide grin on his face that he is completely loyal to him and the Grand Duke. He would never think of rebellion. Rain tells him not to worry. He believes that he will definitely not betray him, while he checks his stats and finds that his loyalty is really low, and his trade is greedy. Later that night, as Rain is busy doing some paperwork in his office, he thinks that these nobles have turned in about more than 100,000 gold, about 2 years worth of tax that Iselin receives. Right then, Lee comes into the office and offers him his black tea. Rain takes the tea and annoyedly asks if she knows how absolutely fed these nobles are. Lee asks him what he's planning to do about what Adrian said, as she worriedly says if the city lord is really planning to rebel, he'll be in danger. At that, Rain tells her to calm down. He understands her worry, but there's no need to hurry. He explains that he's very certain that Eldrick is planning to rebel, but he can't simply show his hands right now, to which Lee asks why. Rain gets up, stretching his arms, and says because he hasn't figured out who's working for him in Iselin. He's exposed yet his enemies are in the shadows. If he acts rashly, things will fall into chaos. He explains that it's better for him to think that he's merely a naive and ignorant rich boy before he gets to the bottom of it. The next day, at the city lord's mansion, an elderly person goes to the city lord Eldrick and shouts at him, saying nonsense. This is pure nonsense. Eldrick requests Guild Master Malcolm to calm down, as Master Rain is young and in a hurry to prove himself to the Grand Duke. However, Malcolm frustratedly tells him that he doesn't need to take Rain's side, as even the Grand Duke will have to show them wizards respect when he talks to them. Looking at the project recruitment letter for building the dam, Eldrick thinks he was just wondering how he was supposed to bribe the Wizards Guild, and so Rain has brought his upon himself. Then Malcolm storms out of there, saying what insolence, he's going to have a word with him, and Eldrick tries to tell him to wait. But he excitedly thinks that young Master Rain has offended the magical guild, so from then on, he'll be all alone in Isolin. Sometime later, at Rain's office, as he's busy working on the blueprints for the dam, he thinks he's back to the days of making engineering drawings and nothing else. Right then, Lee enters the room, telling him that the guild master of the Wizards Guild, Malcolm, would like to meet him, and Rain confusedly asks who. After that, as he goes to meet him, Malcolm furiously asks what the meaning of this, why he would insult the Wizards Guild so much. Hearing that, Rain confusedly asks what he's talking about, why he insulted the Wizards Guild. Malcolm shows him the project recruitment letter for building the dam and shouts at him, telling him to stop acting clueless as he made this recruitment letter. Looking at it, Rain says yes and asks what of it. He's building a dam, so how that is an insult to the Wizards Guild. Malcolm says that his recruitment letter clearly stated that he refused applications from wizards, and there is no way this isn't a provocation of the Wizards Guild. Hearing that, Rain seems dumbfounded as he wonders if the world there is that cutthroat, if even the wizards take physically demanding jobs. Then, Malcolm tells him that if he can't give him a reasonable explanation, every wizard in the Wizards Guild will refuse to work for him from then on. Right then, Rain calls the system and tells it to show him his stats, and the system does that. Rain checks Malcolm's stats and finds that his loyalty is not low. It looks like someone might have riled him up. So then, he tells him that there's been a misunderstanding. He didn't mean to disrespect the Wizards Guild. There are 3 reasons he's not hiring wizards this time around. First, he explains that the amount of mana is limited every day, and they may not be able to meet the deadline. Second, it's simply too expensive to hire a wizard, as with the same amount of money, he can hire about 10 physical laborers instead. And third, most wizards live a comfortable life from being a part of the guild, yet there's no safety net for the civilians, so they have to pay special consideration to them. Malcolm gets irritated by that and tells Rain that with due respect, magic is the rule in this world, and those without talents for magic deserve to beneath wizards. Hearing that, Rain tells the guild master in a harsh tone that he's correct, but he doesn't like it. So, starting from Isolin, he intends to make everyone understand that wizards are no different from civilians, neither superior nor inferior. Malcolm furiously tells him he suggests that he takes that back if he doesn't want to make them his enemies. However, Rain requests him to mind his tone. Otherwise, his maid will consider it insulting to the nobility and resort to cutting his throat, as Lee puts a knife at Malcolm's throat, which frightens him. Then, Malcolm stutteringly asks Rain what this nonsense is, but Rain says with a smile that he wasn't saying nonsense. This law does exist. He tells him that if he doesn't believe him, he'll have Lee cut his throat, and they should see who the court will judge in favor. He asks how about that. Immediately, Malcolm starts trembling in fear as he keeps apologizing to him and begging him to spare his life. Rain understands that even in a situation like this, his loyalty toward him didn't decrease. He was completely being used, so he thinks what a simple-minded fool. Then he tells Lee to let Mr. Malcolm go. Immediately, Lee puts away the knife from Malcolm's neck, telling Rain yes master, and Malcolm thanks Rain for that. After that, the system notifies Rain that the quest to use the investigate ability on people is completed, and a new quest has become available to obtain 5 high stats characters. Seeing that, Rain gladly thinks he has finally completed the system's quest, and he should see what the rewards are. In the meantime, Guildmaster Malcolm heads outside Rain's office, and seeing him, City Lord Eldrick hurriedly asks how things went. Malcolm annoyedly tells him to say no more, as not only did Master Rain not listen to him, but he even chased him out. Hearing that, Eldrick tells him that he has an idea. Not only will it change Master Rain's mind, but he'll become even more respectful to him. He gets close to Malcolm and tells him in a low voice that when those peasants refuse to work for Master Rain, he'll have no choice but to come to him. But Malcolm asks why the people won't work for young Master Rain when he has given them such a good offer. Eldrick tells him that young Master Rain is bound to be disappointed in these peasants if all they do is lazing around. Malcolm gets shocked realizing what he's implying and says no way. Then he dismissively tells him that he's merely displeased that he refused to hire wizards, but he asks why he would try to sabotage him over this. Hearing that, Eldrick tells him to rest assured, those peasants are a bunch of good-for-nothing anyway, as he questions why they'd be starving if they don't know how to farm or hunt. So he asks Malcolm why these useless people would be serious about helping Master Rain build the dam. After thinking about it for a bit, Malcolm says then he supposes they could give his suggestion a try. The next day, all the citizens of Iselin City gather in front of the dam construction recruitment site and ask what it says. They read the conditions, and one of them says, "Oh right, he heard the offer is amazing too. 3 meals a day are provided, and the wages are 10 copper coins." But another person skeptically asks if the new lord really is this nice, if they are going. Some agree, and a man says it must be a trap, as if the nobles haven't tricked them plenty of times before. So they decided that they're definitely not going, else they'd probably be dead before they even know it. But at that moment, Lillian shouts at them telling them not to dare slander his lordship. She explains that his lordship has told her himself that he's going to try to make everyone's life better, which surprises the others. But then, the people start laughing at her saying they're laughing their back off, and ask what a girl like she knows. They also ask Lillian if it isn't right that she has got feelings for that pretty boy, but Lillian ignores them as she walks toward the recruitment desk along with her dad. Then, she greets the recruiter and tells him that she and her father would like to apply to the dam project. Looking at them, the recruiter tells Lillian that her father will be accepted, but not she, which confuses Lillian, and she asks why not, as she's pretty strong too. The recruiter asks her if it isn't right that she's not even of age, as Master Rain said those below the age of 18 would not be hired. If they hired her and Rain found out, he'd surely punish them. He tells Lillian's father that he may participate. 10 copper coins will be paid out at the end of every day, just to make a handprint there, and show up at the construction site the next day. Then, Lillian lectures her dad, telling him that he has to work hard, absolutely no slacking off, and her dad gladly pats her on the head, telling her not to worry as he'll not gamble again. He says with a determined look on his face that he will not let young Master Rain down, as he recalls him showing up at the casino to raid it. After that, Lillian's father walks home with her, telling her that she should stay at home and take care of her mother. She can't work in the field with her sickness. The recruiter gets surprised to hear that and tells them to wait and come back there. At that, Lillian's father asks what the matter is. The recruiter asks if he just said that his wife is sick, and Lillian's father worriedly tells him that his wife is very sick. She really can't work at all. The recruiter asks with a smile who asked her to work. Rain has stated that the family members of anyone working for the dam project may relocate temporarily to the workers' quarters. Lillian's father seems surprised by that. Then the recruiter explains that it's like a temporary residence while they're working on the dam's construction. Once it's finished, they may return to their own home. Hearing that, Lillian's father gets to the ground with tears of joy in his eyes and keeps thanking him very much. The recruiter gladly tells him to get up now, as he'll get someone to take him and his daughter to the quarters, and he can pick where he'd like to live. Seeing all that, the other citizens of Iselin excitedly ask, hold on, if the new lord was telling the truth, as they have to sign up now, they can't miss out on this chance. So then, everyone starts crowding in front of the recruiter to participate in the dam construction, and the soldiers shout at everyone to get in line, to form a straight line, and not push. The next day, at Rain's office, he checks the system, and the system congratulates him, as he has received a blueprint of lithium iron phosphate battery from the Novice Host Reward Pack. Thinking about receiving a blueprint for batteries, Rain frustratedly bashes his fist on his work table, as he asks what the hell he's supposed to do with it without an electricity generator, if the system wants him to carry the batteries and get lighting to strike him. Then Rain looks at the current active quest, raise and obtain 5 stat characters, of which he got not a single one, and annoyedly wonders where on earth he finds someone like that. He recalls that he was thinking he could train Lee, and then he took a look at her stats, and she doesn't even have room to grow anymore, so he guesses he has to go into the city to scout for talents again. Right then, Lee knocks on the door and tells Rain that Lillian is there to see him, and Rain tells her to let her in. Immediately, Lillian enters the office, worriedly telling Rain that things are weird in the construction site. Everyone is slacking off, which surprises Rain. After that, Lillian heads back to the construction site and frustratedly asks her dad why he's taking a break again. Her father exhaustively tells her he promises he's not trying to slack off. He has been feeling tired since he woke up that morning, and no one there has any energy either. Seeing that, Lillian shouts at everyone, telling them that they've gotten such a good offer from his lordship, so she asks why they're still slacking off. One of the workers releases a big yawn and tells her that they aren't trying to, but they've been feeling like this since the morning. Another worker tells Lillian while lying on the ground, maybe it's been so long since they last worked that they're all sick from the instant exhaustion from work. They'll probably feel better if they rest for a day. Hearing that, Lillian furiously yells at her uncle, telling him to stop with the nonsense. They're probably all just lazy, as there's no way a disease like that exists. So then, she brings in Master Rain, telling him that they ought to listen to him, so to tell them to work harder and not slack off. At that moment, Rain walks up to Lillian's father and uses his ability to check his stats. Immediately, he notices an anomaly, a curse. So then, he worriedly tells Lillian that they are not sick, they are cursed, while a mana crystal is hidden in the construction area, which is spreading the curse. After that, Rain looks around the construction area as he uses his prospecting ability to check for any anomalies. He thinks that he was planning to use it when the dam's construction starts, so it looks like he gets to test it now. The system explained to him that through prospecting, he can analyze the state of rocks, strata, formations, minerals, hydrology, and landforms in a specified area. So Rain tells the system to analyze the geological condition of this area, and the system says, analyzing the geological condition within a 10-kilometer radius, please wait. As the system analyzes the area, Rain finds that there's no petroleum or metals down there, and thinks, a shame. But then, he finds something and thinks wait, as he wonders what that is. He asks Lillian's father if he can dig more over there. As he thinks there's something down there, Lillian's father starts digging, saying got it, as this is nothing even if they're all tired. But after a little while, his tool hits something, and he surprisedly asks what this is. He finds an ominous-looking rock, so he questions if they dug up something they weren't supposed to. At that moment, Lee looks at Rain and wonders if he's actually a genius in magic, as the magic from this is so faint that even she couldn't feel it, so how he did. Immediately, Rain orders Lillian's father, with an irritated look on his face, to dig up the crystal and put it in the box, and Lillian's father says yes, Master Rain. Then, Rain turns toward Lee and asks what people normally do when they've been cursed. Lee tells him that they can go to the church and have a priest remove it, or they can look for a high-level wizard from the Wizards Guild. Hearing that, Rain guesses some kind of connection here as he asks if she said the Wizards Guild. Then he tells Lillian to follow him and bring her father, as they're going to find a priest. Lillian gets a bit worried by that and asks if her father has actually been cursed. Rain tells her to rest assured, whoever did this will not get away with it, as he looks a bit furious, thinking the guild master Malcolm might have something to do with this. After that, they all head to the church in the city together, and seeing Rain there, a saint there welcomes him with a smile. Rain cautiously thinks since he's asking her to treat someone, he better make sure her loyalty is good first, so he tells the system to investigate, and the system starts investigating. Rain checks her stats and finds that her loyalty is 95, but then it shows her race to be elf, so he finds it surprising that she's not even human. After that, the saint formally calls him Master Rain and tells him that she's Saint Aurea from the church, so she asks what she can do for him. Rain points at Lillian's father, telling Aurea that this Mr. here seems to be cursed, and asks if she can do something about it, thinking her loyalty seems fine, so he'll let her take a look first. Then, Aurea requests him to allow her to inspect him first, as she uses her ability to check on Lillian's father. Both Lillian and Lillian's father find the light from her ability blinding, so they hurriedly cover their eyes. After that, Aurea tells Rain that he's correct, Lillian's father is indeed cursed. Rain asks her if she can remove it, then Aurea uses a spell, which creates a ball of holy magic and sends it toward Lillian's father. Lillian's father seems confused by that. Then the ball of light enters his chest and throws out the curse from within his body. After that, Lillian's father excitedly tells Rain he feels like a new man, so he's going to work now. He'll finish all the work he's supposed to do that day and then some. But Rain tells him no need to hurry, it won't be too late to start after they resolve everything first. Then he shows Saint that the stone they found at the construction site, and asks if she knows what it's supposed to be. Aurea picks it up and says this dark crystal here is the most common magical crystal. A huge amount of magic has been stored inside for the curse to take effect. She explains that though it's more like a prank than a curse, the caster is capable of killing anyone with the same amount of magic. But all he's doing is making people feel tired. Rain asks her if it is very easy to manufacture this sort of crystal, to which she explains that it'll be very easy for a high-level wizard to make one and hit it in his construction site on a daily basis. Rain gets a bit skeptical hearing her say that, as he asks if she knows about his project. Ayuria tells him with a smile that this project will benefit the civilians there greatly, so she asks why she wouldn't know about it. And thanks to it, the pressure on the church is much less as well. After hearing all that, Rain can only think of one person as the culprit, Guildmaster Malcolm, and believes that it looks like he has got to teach that old man a lesson. Then, he asks Saint Ayuria if she has some way to remove the curse on the entire construction, and Ayuria says that will be difficult. She explains that he was able to find the crystal that day, but he may not be so lucky again. Plus, if all he's doing is digging up the crystal, she asks who will focus on the actual construction. Realizing that, Rain thinks it seems like he will still have to approach Malcolm about this. It's just, he seems conflicted about something. Right then, Ayuria tells him that she knows someone who will be able to solve his problem, though she is a little strange, so she asks if he'd like to try nevertheless. After that, Rain and Lee go to meet the person referred by Saint Ayuria, and standing in front of her house, Rain thinks, so this is the house of Lady Selena, the former president of the Wizards Guild. He believes that one way or another, he will persuade her to help him as he knocks on her door. But right at that moment, Lee gets startled by something and hurriedly pushes Rain toward the inside of the house, telling him to be careful. Immediately, a big explosion occurs in the room on the first floor of the house, right above them. Rain seems confused by that and wonders what's happening. What if the person thereafter is being attacked? But right then, a woman walks out of the smoke from the explosion, frustratedly asking why it failed again. She irritatedly says she won't accept this. She's not stopping until she crafts it successfully, even if she has to level the entire city of Iselin. After that, Rain and Lee head inside, and Rain explains the situation to Selena, but Selena says she refuses. She dismissively tells Rain that she's busy researching a new magical device, so she has no time for him. Rain seems surprised to hear about magical devices, so he asks if it's like wands. At that, Selena tells him not to insult her with his lowly understanding, while she takes a bite using magic. Hearing that, Lee tells Lady Selena with a terrifying look on her face that she must ask her to watch her tone while speaking to young Master Rain. Sensing her magical presence, Selena says, "Damn, girl, she has got some great magic in her." So then, she shows a bit of her own power, telling her to stay there as an assistant, and once she has succeeded, she'll help her little master. She asks how that is. But Lee irritatedly tells her that if she doesn't know how to be polite, perhaps she shall teach her. Seeing the tension between the two of them, Rain stands in front of Lee and tells her to calm down, as they're there to ask for help, not to cause trouble. Then he looks at a table with a bunch of stuff on it and asks Lady Selena if she made everything on the table, so if she's making a magical item. Hearing that, Selena says at least he recognized those, all failures, unfortunately. She generates electricity from her hand and explains that she's trying to create a device that can store the powerful electric magic within her. Rain gets surprised to hear that and asks if she's saying a magical device for storing electricity. Selena annoyedly says yep, and when it doesn't work, an explosion happens, like just then. So she tells Rain to go now, as she needs to rest a while before getting back to her research. But Rain seems thoughtful about it. Then he asks if he tells her that he has a way to create a device that can store electricity, if she'll help them deal with the Wizards Guild. Hearing that, Selena calls him Little Master, and annoyedly tells him she told him she has no time for nonsense. But Rain tells her he's serious and again asks if he helps her create a device that stores electricity, if she'll help solve the issue with the Wizards Guild in exchange. Hearing that, Selena lets out her electricity and tells him fine, if he can create a magical device that she needs. Not only will she deal with that dimwit Malcolm, she'll make the Wizards Guild listen to him, but she intimidatingly adds that if he fails, she'll not only be responsible for his safety. After that, they head outside, and sometime later, holding the lithium iron phosphate battery blueprint in his hand, Rain thinks he was just wondering where on earth he has confined electricity. He supposes these wizards can substitute as human electricity generators before the hydraulic generators are built. Then, showing a bunch of batteries connected together placed between them, Selena tells Rain it's built just as he instructed. She adds that she warned him, there's no way these rocks can store magic. They'll explode if she uses even a little magic. Rain hands her a wire connected to the battery, telling her to rest assured. Its capacity is about 185 watt-hours per kilogram, so to show him how much of it she can charge. As Selena grabs it, Rain tells her all right, to release her electricity, and Selena says well then, to let her see if this is truly as powerful as he said. Then, she starts sending out her powerful electricity through the wire into the lithium iron phosphate battery. But seeing it still intact, Selena says impossible, and she confusedly asks if it didn't explode. At that moment, Rain asks her with a smile if that was all, as that's not even half of what the battery can hold, which startles Selena. Then, she infuriatedly calls him a brat and tells him that she'll wipe that smirk off his face. He knows nothing about magic, as she sends out as much electricity as she can through the wire. But after a while, Selena finds herself on the floor, completely exhausted from sending so much electricity. However, the battery is still unscathed, so she irritatedly wonders if this thing can really store her magic. At that moment, Rain checks the stats of the battery and thinks, holy trash, this is enough to power an electric vehicle for more than 3,000 kilometers. He finds it astonishing that Selena can get it to 87% just by herself, and excitedly thinks now that's a convenient human battery bank. After that, Rain thinks, dear battery banks of the Wizards Guild, it's time to showcase their talents, as he brings 2 wires of the battery at 2 ends close together, which sparks up electricity. Selena gets surprised to see him do that so easily, and asks if he can use electric magic too. Rain tells her not only can he use electric magic, he can make it so that everyone in the city of Iselin can use electric magic. Hearing that, Selena says what nonsense, as she asks how can magic be learned that easily. Rain explains that he has magic devices even more powerful than this battery here. If she's willing to help him, he'll show her a world where everyone can use magic. So he extends her hand towards Selena, asking her how about that, and Selena seems amazed to hear about a world where everyone can use magic. Sometime later, at the Wizards Guild, the guild leader Malcolm is going through some papers, thinking that he believes it's about time for Master Rain to come begging for help. But then, he gets startled to find Selena walking up to him, telling him long time no see, and Malcolm stuttering asks her why she's there, calling her President Selena. Selena tells him in a harsh tone that it seems he has got some guts, daring to stand up to the young lord of the Duke's family, if he's trying to rebel or something. Malcolm starts trembling in fear, asking what she's talking about, as he'd never dare think of something so dangerous. Then Selena holds him by his collar and yells at him to spill it, what kind of dirty tricks he pulled at the young lord's construction site. She starts letting out some of her magic, asking if he doesn't know that she has got a bit of temper. At that, Malcolm finally gives in and desperately tells her that he'll talk, so he requests her to spare him. He explains that he gathered all the mages from the association and told them that Lord Rain looked down on them, making them furious. Then, he had them create crystals that could cast curses and use teleportation magic to place them underground at Lord Rain's construction site. That made the common workers exhausted, hoping Lord Rain would think they were lazy and useless. Eventually, Lord Rain would apologize to him and agree to work closely with the Mage Association from then on. Malcolm cries and tells Selena that's all there is. He swears he had no other intentions. Hearing that, Selena calls him an idiot and asks if he didn't even realize that he was being used. Malcolm seems confused by that and asks who used him, but Selena dismissively tells him enough to go and call back those troublemaking mages immediately. Malcolm hurriedly heads out, saying understood. Then, Selena brings out a communication tool and informs Rain that she has taken care of the problems with the Mage Association for him, and Rain thanks her for that. After that, Selena asks if he needs her to deal with Eldrick for him, as she can make him disappear without a trace. But Rain hurriedly tells her no need, he's no threat. In fact, he needs him to help lure out an even bigger fish. Selena says alright then, since he has got it handled, she'll back off. But then, she excitedly asks when they can start working on those new projects he mentioned. She tells him to be sure to call her when he does. Rain says with a smile, he got it. But first, he tells her to have the mages from the association fully charge those batteries, and Selena says alright. The next day, Eldrick tells the shady person from before, it seems that Kid has taken control of the Mage Association, so he asks what they should do now. The shady person says no rush. Aside from that old hag Selena, there's nothing worth worrying about in the Mage Association of Iselin City, so he tells Eldrick to forget those minor mages. What he really needs to be concerned with is the mysterious dam project. As if the dam works as the young lord claims, it could revitalize the people of Iselin City, and they can't let that happen. At that, Eldrick tells him not to worry, as he has already set a trap for that young lord. He has been secretly pressuring the nobles in charge of the grain supply to raise the prices according to his wishes, and the shady person asks if he's sure those nobles will side with him. Eldrick explains that Rain made them cough up their money at the banquet, but he can help them get it back. Behind the scenes, they might betray him, but they'd never betray their own prophet. So Eldrick proudly says that young Lord doesn't have enough money to keep the damn project going until it's finished. In the meantime, at the market, one of the grain sellers kicks Lillian, furiously telling her if she can't afford it, then to get out of there, causing her to fall to the ground. Lillian irritatedly asks how they can just hike the price like this. The previous day, grain was 1 gold coin for 2 bags, so how it's 2 gold coins for 1 bag that day. The seller yells at her, telling her to save her whining, as it's his grain, and he'll sell it for whatever price he wants. Lillian remembers telling Rain to leave buying grains to them. They'll buy it at the lowest possible price and save him money. And Rain said alright, he'll leave it to them. So she furiously calls the sellers greedy and asks if they aren't afraid Brother Rain will deal with them. The seller says with an evil smile on his face that they're just honest business, so he asks what they can do to them. He again steps on her, excitedly saying that this is a golden opportunity, and they're taking full advantage of it. The seller laughs and adds that if they're broke, just to get lost, while the other citizens frustratedly stand there not able to do anything about it. Sometime later at the church, looking at the sack of grains she managed to buy, Aurea furiously says these humans are getting more and more out of line. She understands that in just 3 days, the price of grain has tripled, so she tells one of her subordinates, Illyria, that this grain won't be enough for their people to survive the winter, so to take these supplies back first, and she'll figure out the rest. Aurea also hands her a pouch filled with coins, telling her to take all this money with her, and when she leaves, to make sure to pay the usual amount. Illyria takes the money and asks if this isn't way too much money, as normally bribing those guards doesn't even cost a third of this. Aurea irritatedly tells her to do as she said, and Illyria says she understood, but right as she's about to keep the pouch, someone quickly comes at her like the wind and snatches it from her. Illyria seems confused by that, while Aurea looks ahead and gets surprised to find that it's a maid. As Lee stands before her, and Rain walks up from behind Lee, asking with a smile if it's the Saintess. He holds the pouch filled with coins in his hands and asks if she'd be interested in making a deal. Aurea asks what kind of business young Master Rain wants to discuss with her, to which he tells her no need to be so tense when talking business, calling her Miss Elf. At that, Aurea annoyedly asks what nonsense he's saying, as this is the human capital. There's no way there are elves there. Rain tosses back the pouch to Illyria, telling Aurea no need to be so guarded. He knows them elves, and he bears no hostility toward their kind. So then, Aurea asks what kind of business Master Rain wants to do with them. Rain looks at the sacks of grains and says, food supplies. Hearing that, Aurea tells him to forgive her bluntness, but this might be beyond his ability. Rain gets surprised by that and asks why she says that. Aurea explains that the food in Iselin City is controlled by the 4 major noble families. These 4 noble families have stood strong in Iselin for over a century, firmly controlling the city's grain prices. She adds that at the banquet a few days ago, he may have intimidated some people with his iron-fisted tactics, but those were just small fry in Iselin City. Rain asks if she knows Iselin City that well, and Aurea explains that she has lived there for 120 years, so yes, she knows it very well. If, at that banquet, he hadn't made a move against the Eldwin family, there might still have been room for negotiation. But now, she fears. She sadly says that due to war and natural disasters, food was already scarce this year. If the grain prices had stayed stable, her people could have barely survived the winter. But now, right then, Rain calls her Miss Elf and tells her that he promises her, within half a month, the price of grain in Iselin City will be cheaper than it was before the price hike. Later that day, at one of the 4 major noble families' house, Augustus Klein, head of the Klein family, laughs and tells the other nobles it's thanks to the city lord's support. The 4 great families made an absolute fortune this time. One of the other nobles says they should thank Lord Augustus for bringing them in on this deal. The other 2 heads of the 4 noble families agree with him and say, yes, it's thanks to Lord Augustus. Then, Augustus calls everyone for a toast, saying it is to their business thriving more and more, and everyone cheers with their wine glasses with him. But then, a servant enters the room and informs Augustus that young Master Rain has sent an invitation requesting his presence at a banquet with the other 3 lords. The head of one of the noble families gets surprised to hear about a banquet with young Master Rain, and worriedly wonders if they think he's planning to come after them next. So he hurriedly asks Augustus what they do. They just want to make money, not die. But Augustus tells him not to worry. The city lord has already assured him that raising grain prices was entirely legal and compliant, so as long as they don't provoke young Master Rain, nothing will happen. Besides, he bashes his fist on the table and excitedly says if they 4 of them stick together, there's nothing he can do to them. He explains that the price of grain is set by them merchants. Even the emperor doesn't have the authority to interfere, let alone some duke's youngest son. Hearing that, the other lords also excitedly say, that's right, if they seize this opportunity, their families won't face poverty for the next 100 years. Then, Augustus gets up telling everyone that they're selling grain at 2 gold coins per sack, and if young Master Rain pushes too hard, they'll drop it by 5 copper coins to appease him. He adds with a terrifying look on his face that if anyone dares to back out, he won't let it slide. The other lords tell him to rest assured, as they'll stick with him to the end, they will work with him. Augustus says good, now they'll all change into something more appropriate and head to young Master Rain's banquet. The other lords get surprised to hear about changing clothes. That night, at Rain's mansion, Lee stands beside Rain, massaging his shoulders. Then, a servant enters the room and informs Rain that Lord Augustus and the others have arrived. At that, Rain tells him with an excited look on his face to let them in, and tell the kitchen to start serving the good. And the servant confusedly says understood. After that, the 4 heads of the great noble houses, wearing shabby clothes, and bow before Rain, as Augustus tells him, greetings, calling him young Master Rain. Seeing that, Rain wonders if they're trying to act poor in front of him, as they've got a lot to learn. Then, he asks them, well, if they aren't the nobles who control Iselin's grain supply, so why they look so disheveled. Augustus tells him they recently heard about his project, which greatly benefits the people, so they'd like to contribute as well. Another noble says under his guidance, they've not only donated a large sum of money, but also have sold grain from their warehouses to the townsfolk at the lowest possible price, to which Lee furiously thinks, these crooks are shameless, they're blatantly trying to deceive young Master. However, Rain tells the nobles with a smile that he's truly moved by their understanding and support for his efforts. He also thanks them for their assistance, but he tells them that he has invited them all there that day to discuss some business related to grain. At that, Augustus tells young Master Rain they understand that he has been tight on funds lately, but he sadly explains that 2 gold coins per sack is already a loss for them. Other nobles also agree with him, telling Rain that's right, absolutely. But then, Rain tells them that they misunderstand. What he meant was, he asks, starting the next day, if they can raise the price of grain in Iselin City to 4 gold coins per sack. The nobles get shocked to hear that, and Augustus asks what, if he means 4 gold coins per sack, if he's raising the price. Rain says with a devilish grin on his face, exactly, and he'll take a 30% commission. He asks the nobles how that sounds. Hearing that, Augustus tells him that he's an old man. His hearing isn't what it used to be, as he reconfirms by asking if he just said they should raise the grain price to 4 gold per bag. In response, Rain tells him not to forget. He's entitled to a 30% commission in this deal. Hearing that, the nobles excitedly think. They originally thought young Master Rain was just an inexperienced kid, but it looks like he's just as much of a cunning merchant as the rest of them, and with him being so understanding, this road just got a lot smoother for them. They realized that if they had known young Master Rain was this reasonable, they would have visited much earlier. But Augustus also understands that without an official decree, they can't raise the price. Otherwise, if a rebellion breaks out, they'll be the ones to suffer. So he thanks Rain for understanding them lowly servants and asks when he plans to post the announcement. Rain takes a document from Lee, telling Augustus that the document is already written, with the family seal stamped on it. After they finish their meal, he'll put it up. But he tells the nobles to make this clear. If anyone dares to disobey him starting the next day, the fate of those from the Eldwin family should serve as a warning. He asks if they don't think. Augustus happily tells him to rest assured, as they won't let his kindness go to waste, and the other nobles agree with him. After that, the heads of the 4 great noble houses head back to Augustus's estate, and one of the nobles asks if they shouldn't inform the city lord about this, as raising the grain prices instead of lowering them is highly unusual. Hearing that, Augustus breaks his wine glass by throwing it at the floor, furiously calling him a fool, and asks if he has lost his mind. He explains that the more people know about this good thing, the less profit they 4 will make. That little brat can't have much power. He's probably using this to rope them into his plan with benefits. Augustus tells the lords there that the grain price issue stays between them 4. A fortune beyond imagination is right in front of them. Anyone who doesn't take advantage of this crisis is a fool who deserves to lose. At that, the noble tells him with a smile, it's just that he has never seen such a great opportunity in his life. He feels uneasy, so he couldn't help but worry a bit. Then, he gets up and bows before Augustus, telling him that from then on, he'll follow his lead, united through thick and thin. Augustus laughs out loud and says good. From then on, the four of them will stand together. They should act fast before the announcement goes up and gather all the grain from those small merchants outside, as this time, they're going to make a fortune beyond their wildest dreams. Meanwhile, at Rain's office, Euria shouts at Rain, calling him a traitor, and she asks if he didn't promise to lower the grain prices, so why he's colluding with those crooked merchants, and tells him that day she'll show him that the elves are not to be trifled with. Lillian tells her not to act rashly, as Rain promised the price would come down, but Euria says he's colluding with those crooked merchants out there, so how the price could possibly drop. At that, Lillian requests her, with a determined look on her face, to trust Rain, as she believes he must have a plan, and Euria finally calms down. Then, she worriedly asks Rain if he's really going to raise the grain prices, but Rain tells her that's not something she needs to worry about. He explains that the price won't stay high for long. In less than half a month, the grain market will completely collapse. Euria calls him a typical inexperienced young master, and says he has no idea how cruel the world can be. She has lived nearly 200 years and has never seen grain prices drop after a major spike. Then, Rain tells her to let him ask her a question. If he had just held a knife to their throats, how much she thinks the grain price would have dropped, a single copper coin, or maybe 10. Euria frustratedly tells him, even so, he can't raise the price to 4 gold per bag, as when it was 2, at least a few families could scrape together enough to buy 1 bag and barely survive. But if it goes up to 4 gold, they really won't be able to afford it, and they'll starve to death. In response, Rain tells her that at 4 gold per bag, they'd starve to death. At 2 gold per bag, they'd still starve to death. For the common folk of Isolin City, there's no difference between 2 gold and 4 gold. They'll starve either way. One just takes a little longer than the other. It makes Euria even more agitated. Then Rain explains that what he aims to do isn't to make those crooked merchants drop the price by a few coppers, as that's meaningless. What he's going to do is make those crooked merchants lose everything, their homes, their families, their entire livelihoods, as he's looking at the decree with a devilish smile on his face. 7 days later, at Selina's mansion, Rain explains to Selina that during charging, some lithium ions detach from the lithium iron phosphate. They travel through the electrolyte to the negative electrode and embed themselves in the carbon material there. At the same time, electrons are released from the positive electrode and travel through an external circuit to the negative electrode, maintaining the chemical reaction balance. During discharge, lithium ions travel through the electrolyte and reach the negative electrode. Simultaneously, the electrons reach the positive electrode via the external circuit, providing energy to the outside. Selina amazedly says so that's how it works, such an intricate magic system, and Rain says that's all for that day's lesson. Right then, Lee comes and tells him that Saintess Euria is there again. Rain asks if she doesn't have anything better to do, and Selina says it's still because he raised the grain price on purpose. The price of grain in the city has not climbed to nearly 7 gold per bag. Rain tries to say something about it, but before he could, Euria barges into the room, furiously asking him if he didn't say he'd bring the grain prices down. As right now, in all of Isolin City, even the small nobles are struggling to afford grain, let alone the commoners. She asks if he even knows how much 1 bag of grain costs now. At that, Rain asks Lee with a smile how many days it has been since they started raising prices, and Lee replies it's been 7 days. Rain says with a cunning look on his face, in that case, it's time to send those crooked merchants on their way. Euria frustratedly tells him to stop with these cryptic statements already, and requests him to explain everything to her right now, otherwise, the Elven clan will absolutely sever all ties with him. Rain explains that the reason he didn't tell her before was to ensure her performance wouldn't seem fake and arouse suspicion from those nobles, and says now to let him finally reveal the truth to her. He asks Miss Saintess, with the news that their grain price is at least 4 gold per bag, what she thinks is the most lacking thing in the city of Isolin right now. Euria says there's no lacking of anything, but Rain tells her, a merchant who sells grains, which surprises her. Euria nervously wonders if it could be that, and Rain asks her if she finally understands. He tells her yes, the only thing that is lacking in Isolin City is food and the merchants to sell it. He explains that greed is the most easily controlled attribute in human nature. No one can control themselves in the face of greed. The price of grain in Isolin City has risen to 4 gold per bag. When the merchants in the surrounding towns hear the news, they will rush to Isolin City with their supplies. Those merchants will definitely come with great quantities of grain, and it'll definitely be bought by those 4 idiots at a high price, which will further inflate the desires of those merchants. Right now, Isolin City is practically the most food-lacking city in the entire empire. Merchants will lose any rationality left in front of a 10,000% profit. There are only 2 words in their mind: get rich. But Rain says after that day, the 4 noble houses of Isolin City will cease to exist, as he hands Lee some papers and tells her to post this document on the streets of the entire Isolin City, to tell them that the saint of the church, Miss Ayuria, decided to sell the church's grain reserves because she couldn't stand Master Rain's behavior. Rain adds that the price is 1 gold coin per bag, and tells Lee to make sure everyone knows about this. Lee says yes, but Ayuria tells him to wait and asks why he's giving her such a great fame, to which Rain says because he doesn't have any food, so he asks how he can sell it. But Ayuria says she doesn't have that much food with her. Then, she worriedly tells him he doesn't want her to sell her people's food for the winter. She frustratedly tells Rain she's telling him it's impossible. This food is for her elven people to survive the winter. Selena giggles, telling her she's so naive. As if she were her, she would listen to the young master and get rid of all the food in her hands immediately. If she's a second late, she'll lose a lot of money. At that, Ayuria says that they elves are not interested in money, they just need food. However, Rain tells Miss Saint to do as he says and she'll only get more grain, so not to worry. Also, he tells Lady Selena that he's counting on her and the Wizards Guild to seal the city. Selena tells Rain with a smile not to worry, as she won't let even a mouse escape from the city. Then Rain tells everyone okay, it's time to make those profiteers pay the price, as they all get ready to fulfill their respective roles in the plan. After that, as Rain is alone with Lee, Lee seems to be thinking about something, so Rain asks if she has something to say. Lee tells him she's worried that things won't go so smoothly, as she asks what if those merchants hold on for a few days and Miss Ayuria sells out all her food. At that, Rain says that there are 2 kinds of schemes. One is called conspiracy, the other is called open conspiracy. They can hide from conspiracy, but they can't hide from open conspiracy. He explains that those foreign merchants were blinded by desire and staked their lives on this wave. They want to get rich overnight, so if they knew that food prices were falling, they would definitely rush to cash out, because if they're slow, they'll die. Later that day at Lord Augustus's mansion, a merchant hurriedly rushes in and tells him that something bad has happened. The church posted a message saying that in order to help the people, they decided to sell the church's food reserves for 1 gold coin per bag. Hearing that, one of the other nobles worriedly asks what they should do. Another noble says shit, they forgot about the church. And the last noble asks Augustus, yes, what they should do, as when they were hoarding food, they bought it at 2 gold coins per bag. Hearing all their concerns, Augustus dismissively asks what there is to panic about. How much food can a single church have? Enough for the people of Isolin City to eat for a few days. So he tells the other nobles to find a few people to sneak into the church and buy as many as they can. And the nobles say yes. Meanwhile, all the people of Isolin City gather in front of the church and keep telling Saintess Ayuria that they want 5 bags. Some even say they want 10 bags, but Ayuria tells everyone not to crowd, as there's enough food for everyone to buy. The Pope learned that everyone was in financial difficulty, so he sent 100,000 bags of food. Hearing that, some citizens surprisedly say they don't believe it and tell everyone to hurry and buy it, as if they wait, it'll be gone, and the rest agree, saying that's right. So they start riling up, saying they want to buy it now, to give it to them, to give them. And Ayuria nervously tells them not to crowd and requests them to line up. Right then, some soldiers arrive there, and the captain shouts at everyone to behave themselves. At that, the citizens calm down a bit and make way for him. Then the captain goes up to Ayuria and tells her that this is the food provided by His Holiness the Pope. This is the first batch. Starting from the next day, the food supplies from the other teams will gradually arrive at Isolin City. Ayuria gladly says okay, but inside, she frustratedly hopes that Master Rain stops adding extra scenes to her story, as she can't handle it anymore. She wonders how she should respond, and what if the Pope really finds out, while the citizens excitedly say there is food, they're saved. Seeing all that, one of the merchants that came from another city worriedly thinks it's over, the deal is ruined, the church messed it up. When he bought it, it was 60 silver coins, and including the transportation cost and his expenses over the past few days, if he sells 1 bag of grain for 95 silver coins, he can still make a profit. So he hurriedly starts shouting, saying grain for sale, this year's new grain, 95 silver coins a bag, which startles the other foreign merchants. They see people starting to gather in front of that merchant, telling him that they want 10 bags. So the other merchants furiously think of him as dumb, as he shouldn't dare to play this game with them. If they're going to die, they're going to die together. After that, the merchants start bringing the prices of their grains down even lower, shouting 90 silver coins a bag, 88 silver coins per bag, 85 silver coins per bag. Seeing all that from afar, Lee tells Rain this is amazing. It's exactly as he said, while the price keeps going lower. Rain tells Lee to see, as that's human nature. If they sell 1 second slower than others, they'll suffer several times loss, and everyone is afraid they'll sell too late, so they're selling like crazy. At that, Lee gladly asks if it isn't right that with this, the grain prices will definitely return to the 50 silver per bag. But then, his dam project can be completed on time. However, Rain playfully asks if she's saying 50 silver, as he tells her that she underestimates these merchants. He explains that when Augustus and his people start selling, food would be the least valuable thing in the entire Iselin city. Lee asks if it could be that Augustus and the others will also sell off like these foreign merchants, as they paid 2 gold or more to buy it from the market. Besides, Augustus and the others were on the same page at the banquet, so she asks if it isn't right that they won't turn their backs on each other. Rain tells her that she takes them too seriously, as when it comes to profit, not one leaves without a fight. Then he proceeds inside, saying the grain prices in Iselin City have already settled down, so it's time to go talk to the Saintess about the second half of the deal. They should go, and Lee tells him yes. Some time later, the merchant that previously informed Augustus about the situation goes back to him and tells him that those grain merchants from other places are lowering their prices like crazy. He worriedly says that now the price of grain has dropped to 75 silver coins per bag. Hearing that, one of the heads of the great noble house furiously shouts impossible. He asks what nonsense he is talking about, as if all the grain Iselin aren't in their hands, so where they got it from. The merchant gets on the floor and desperately tells Lord Roland that it's true. How dare he lie to him? At that moment, Augustus thinks about it for a bit. Foreign grain merchants, raising prices, and then he shouts, saying he understands now. He furiously says Master Rain is so cruel. He wants their family to be destroyed. Hearing him say all that, the other nobles worriedly ask him what's going on. Then, Augustus frustratedly explains that first, Master Rain made a big deal about the skyrocketing price of food in Iselin City. After that, the merchants in the neighboring towns were attracted to enter Iselin with food. And when the merchants poured into the city with their grain, he slashed the prices in the name of the church, and put all the merchants who had already arrived in the city into a panic. In the end, those foreign merchants had to cut their losses in order not to lose money. Hearing that, Ronald horrifiedly says Master Rain actually used such a despicable method. However, Augustus says he has another plan. Maybe it can help them turn their tables, and the other nobles hurriedly beg him to speak. Then, Augustus explains that there's only enough food to feed the people of Iselin for a few months, so if they stockpile their grain until the people run out, they'll sell it at a high price. So he tells the other nobles that if they all work together that day and don't sell, they'll be able to wait till the day they get their money back. But if any of them decides to sell, they're all dead. Hearing that, Roland starts sweating heavily, but he says Augustus is right. He'll go home right now and order all the food to be sealed. However, as he hurriedly leaves for his home, he worriedly thinks, wait a minute, he has to sell all his grains immediately. He absolutely can't sell it slower than them. Looking at him, the other 2 nobles irritatedly think of him as a bastard, as they wonder if it isn't right that he's thinking about running away. And since that's the case, everyone will have to rely on their own abilities. So then, they too hurriedly leave Augustus's estate, telling him that they should go back and make some arrangements. After that, the merchant under Augustus tells him that he will tell his men to watch over the food and not to sell it. But Augustus kicks him in the face, furiously calling him a bastard and telling him if he doesn't sell it, what if those 3 bastards do? Which shocks the merchant. Then, Augustus orders him to sell all their food stocks immediately, not to leave a single grain behind. And the merchant hurriedly says yes and leaves to do that. The next day, at the church, Rain shows Aurea the sacks of grains gathered for her and asks how it is, if this food is enough for her people to survive the winter. Seeing all those grains, Aurea surprisedly asks why it is that more and more food is coming in. Rain explains that because they sell at the highest point and buy at the lowest point, between this sell and buy, they should at least earn tens of thousands of gold. Right then, Lillian comes running inside and tells Rain that food prices have dropped again. Now they can buy 3 bags with 1 gold coin. Rain tells Ayuria to see, as he told her that if they wait a little longer, food prices will go even lower. But she didn't believe him, and if she buys now, she can buy a dozen more bags of food. So then, he gets up and asks if they can talk about their deal now, and Ayuria nervously asks what kind of deal he wants to make with them elves. Rain extends his hand toward her, saying everything, which startles Ayuria and confuses her as she asks if he's saying everything. Rain tells her that's right, everything. They'll handle all aspects of their elven community's clothing, food, housing, and transportation business. As long as the elves have a need, they can negotiate the price. Ayuria tells him it's such a big matter, she can't make the decision. He needs to go talk to their queen. Rain says no problem, and requests her to help him make an appointment with her queen. They can go anytime. Then, Saintess Ayuria leaves the place along with Illyria, handing her a letter and requesting her to give it to the queen. And Illyria says yes. After that, Rain sits back on his chair and thinks, after this food crisis, the nobles of the Isolin city won't be able to pull off any major schemes for a while. The Wizards Guild is under his control, and the church will be under his control in a matter of days. So he understands that the city Lord Eldrick still has 2 trump cards in his hand. The army and the taxes, as long as he can take control of the army, no matter what tricks Eldrick uses. He will not be able to escape from his control, so he needs to find a way to infiltrate the army, preferably. Right then, Lee holds him from behind and melodically calls him young master, which surprises him. Lee tells him that he should rest. She will help him relax, as she starts massaging his head. At that, Rain tells her he's not that tired. However, immediately, he gladly stops talking as he finds it really comforting. But then, he hears someone shouting, calling the soldiers bastards and saying that the Grand Duke's reputation is at stake. Rain looks ahead and finds a man frustratedly asking Ayuria if God couldn't just let those soldiers be struck to death by lightning, which startles Ayuria, and she says God is merciful. The man says he has lost and gained a lot of money in his business there in Isolin City. He knows that. But on the way home those soldiers robbed him of so much money, so what's the point of doing business? He also tries to say something about the Grand Duke. Right at that moment, Rain gets up from his chair and calls him buddy. He walks up to the man asking what happened, and the man furiously points at him asking who he is. Rain replies to that, telling him with a smile, someone who wants to do business with him. Some time later, at the city gate, a soldier stops Lillian, who's heading out with some carriages, and asks where she's from. What's that in the carriage behind her? Lillian tells the soldier that she's a citizen of Isolin City, and the carriage is loaded with goods from the city, intended to be transported to the elves to see if they can do some business. The soldier says she said do business, so he asks if she's a merchant and orders other soldiers to go search the carriage. The soldiers go up to the carriage with goods and hit the pots with their weapons to check inside, breaking them. Seeing that, Lillian requests them not to do this, as she asks how she's supposed to transport it if the jars are all broken. Then, one of the soldiers tells their boss that there's nothing, so he asks what they should do. And the boss tells him to just collect some toll according to the rules. The soldier tells Lillian to just pay the customs duties and she can go. Hearing that, Lillian irritatedly tells him that they broke all her stuff and asks if now they're charging her customs duties. At that, the soldier yells at her, telling her to either pay her taxes or get out. Lillian tries to argue further with them, but then, someone from inside the passenger carriage calls her. He tells her to give them the money, and Lillian says yes. Then she frustratedly proceeds to hand the soldier a silver coin. However, the soldier tells her with a devilish smile on his face that Master Rain has raised the taxes, and it's now 5 silver coins. Lillian furiously asks what? 5 silver coins. All her goods is only 3 silver coins. And if they want her to give them 5 silver coins, however, the soldier tells her to hand over the money or get out of the way. Lillian burns with anger as she hands him the coins, thinking, how dare they cheat in Brother Rain's name? He never ordered to increase the taxes. They should see how Rain deals with them after his plan is accomplished. Then, the Soliter tells the other soldier to let them pass, and the other soldier says yes. After that, Lillian drives the carriages out of Isolin City. While sitting inside the passenger carriage, Rain tells the merchant that came to him that this Master Rain is a piece of trash. He actually raised the taxes so much. But the merchant requests him to be respectful, as Master Rain is the benefactor of their Isolin City, so he's not allowed to slander him like this. Rain says he's such a strange merchant. The soldier clearly said Master Rain asked them to raise the price. But he doesn't hate him, he asks instead if he hates those soldiers. Then the merchant excitedly says he guesses he just came there recently, so he doesn't know, to help the people of Isolin City. Master Rain used a clever trick to completely lower the grain prices. He explains that although he also lost a lot of money there, but this is the first time he has seen such a lord who cares so much about his people. So he tells Rain that if he has the chance to meet Master Rain, he wants to show him that he's willing to die for him. But Rain says he heard on the way there that the youngest son of the Duke not only killed people at the banquet, but also used all the people to dig some kind of project. The merchant tells him that he must be talking about the Eldwin family, and their family deserves it. Rain asks if he knows them. At that, the merchant tells him that he's indeed not from that city, as there's not a single merchant in Iselin who doesn't know the Eldwins. He explains that ordinary people think the Eldwin family made their fortune from the casino, but in reality, it's not. Rain gets surprised to hear that and asks if he knows something. The merchant looks back and forth to check if anyone is listening that shouldn't, and then he whispers to Rain that the real business of the Eldwin family is human trafficking. Rain gets shocked to hear that and asks what he said. He infuriatedly thinks they don't have enough people in the city in the first place, so how dare he touch his labor force. He understands that he has to get the border guards under control first, otherwise, if they get into a civil conflict, it's going to be a very difficult situation, because other states might take advantage of the situation. Right then, they get startled to hear Lillian frustratedly asking why they're collecting tax again. She confusedly asks a soldier at the border gate if they didn't collect the tax when they left Iselin. But the soldier tells her that the taxes of Iselin City belong to Iselin City, and the taxes on the border belong to the border fortress. Lillian furiously says that's trash, as in the past, they only had to pay the tariffs once. At that, the Solider points his weapon at her, calling her a little girl, and tells her that either she just hands over the money obediently, or just gets out of there and goes back. It irritates Lillian even more, but she tries to control her anger and asks how much it is, and the soldier says with a devilish grin, 1 gold coin. Lillian gets shocked to hear that and asks what if he said 1 gold coin, as he's just stealing money. However, Rain tells her from inside the carriage to follow the rules. Lillian tries to object to that, but says okay. Hearing Rain, the soldier shouts, asking if anyone else is inside, and tells them to get down there. This is a border fortress, so all travelers must be checked, as several other soldiers surround the passenger carriage. After that, Rain steps out of the carriage, telling the soldier that since he wants to check, then he'll let him check. And the soldier surprisedly asks who he is. He calls the merchant Trist, who is with Rain, an old bastard, and furiously asks if he still dares to come there, while Trist seems to be trembling in fear. Hearing that, Rain asks Trist if he's an acquaintance, and Trist replies that these people used to be bandits from the nearby mountains. He explains that later, he cooperated with the Eldwin family and was responsible for human trafficking, and the Eldwin family got him there. Then, the soldier tells Trist with a terrifying look on his face that the last time he went out of the city, he didn't pay enough tariffs, so he was scolded severely. So he slaps him in the face hard, furiously telling him that if he doesn't make up for the money, he won't be able to leave that day. At that, Trist frustratedly says nonsense. He gave him the exact amount of money he asked for back then. The soldier points his weapon at him, saying there wasn't any shortage of money then, but that doesn't mean there isn't now. Originally, if it wasn't for him sitting inside the carriage, they would have let them pass by charging some gold coins. But now that they've seen him, if they don't hand them 5 gold coins, they can't leave, which irritates Trist even more. But then, Rain tells the soldier no, this tariff is so heavy, so he asks how the tax revenue of Iselin City can be so low. The soldier gets surprised to hear him tell him that and asks where he came from. However, at that moment, he gets shocked by something. His eyes fall on Lee, and he astonishedly thinks there's such a beautiful girl in Iselin City. Then Trist tells the soldier he wants 5 gold right. He'll give it to him right now, and requests him to not make things difficult for them, as they're his business friends. The soldier takes the pouch of gold coins from his hand, saying is expected of him, calling him an honest old fellow, and tosses it to his subordinate, telling him to put it away for him. After that, he excitedly extends his hand toward Lee, calling her a little beauty, and asks where she lives. Immediately, Rain stops him by grabbing his hand and infuriatedly tells him that originally he wanted to see if he could be a free labor force. Now it seems to be completely hopeless. At that, the soldier proceeds to strike Rain with his weapon, furiously telling him that he's looking to die. But right then, Lee passes by him at a tremendous amount of speed and lands a fatal cut on his neck using her knife in the blink of an eye. After that, she looks back at the soldier as he falls dead to the ground, and his subordinates seem completely terrified by that. Rain tells Lee to kill all the resistors and then let the escorts they brought take charge of guarding there. Lee tells him yes. Hearing that, the other soldiers hurriedly run away from there, screaming for someone to come quickly as there's a murderer there. They beg for someone to save them. However, Lee rushes toward them and catches up to them in an instant. Then, she uses her knife to strike them down in lightning speed without even breaking a sweat. Meanwhile, Rain checks the stats of the soldiers and wonders if these people really are soldiers, as the difference in the numbers are so much. He recalls his father warning him that behind Iselin City is the territory of the enemy country, so he must be careful not to cause a dispute between them, and asked if he understands, to which Rain said yes father. Now he thinks, fortunately, he discovered this big problem. Otherwise, if there's a dispute with the Empire, he'll only lose. After that, as Lee walks toward the rest of the soldiers to finish them off, pointing her knife at them, the incompetent soldiers tremble in fear. Right then, someone furiously asks who dares to cause trouble at the border of Iselin City, and seeing him, the soldiers excitedly say that General Caesar is coming, so they're saved. They beg him to save them, and looking at Lee and Rain, General Caesar irritatedly asks if they're the ones making trouble at the border. Rain checks his stats and gets surprised to find that this Caesar doesn't care about loyalty, but he's really a talent, as his loyalty is only 12, and the other stats are really high. So then, Rain tells him that he's Caesar of the Halker family, and asks if it isn't right that he has a brother who works in Prisia's territory. Hearing that, Caesar asks who he is and how he knows about his brother, to which Rain replies that it's because Prisia Edgar is his older sister, which surprises him. He asks if he is Master Rain, if he's the youngest son of Grand Duke Aldarion, and the other soldiers get shocked to hear that as they ask what if it's the Grand Duke's son. They keep saying, it's over, they've offended the wrong person, while General Caesar thinks he remembers his brother's letter. It said that Master Rain will be coming to Iselin City in the near future, so his brother told him that he must pay attention to protect Master Rain's safety. However, a month ago, the city Lord Eldrick offered Caesar tons of gold and told him that the city of Iselin will be relying on him in the future. Caesar thanked him for his kindness, then Eldrick manipulated him by telling him that the Grand Duke sent him to this inhospitable place because he doesn't like him. He explained to Caesar that it goes without saying that his strength deserves a higher status, and asked if it isn't also what he wants. Hearing that, Caesar said that's right, this is what he deserves. He shouldn't waste his life in a place like this. So now, he proceeds to draw his sword in front of Rain, asking how dare he pretend to be Master Rain, and shouts at all soldiers to obey orders. Caesar tells them with a determined look on his face to kill this fake Master Rain, and he will reward them heavily. At that, Lee shouts at Caesar, furiously asking how bold. She calls him by his name, Caesar Halker, and asks if he's planning to rebel. One of Caesar's soldiers worriedly tries to explain to him not to do this, as this is a crime that'll lead to the destruction of the family. And the other soldiers tell Caesar that's right. However, Caesar takes out his sword and plants it in the ground, furiously asking if they've forgotten what they just did. He tells them that they've already blackmailed the son of the Grand Duke and violated the law. Caesar adds that they should have heard of what Rain did. The Eldwin family was wiped out by him, and the four lords were also ruined by him, which terrifies the soldiers. Then Caesar says this is the westernmost part of the Caradorial Empire, and they have the wealth that they have looted for years. If they take Rain's head to the Orvis Empire in the north, they can at least live a happy life as a minor noble. So he points his sword at his soldiers, shouting at them, life or death, they can choose for themselves, he won't force them. At that, the soldiers nervously ask themselves if they should listen to the general, as they seem more and more inclined to follow him. Seeing that, Lee frustratedly thinks, damn it, these soldiers have been bewitched by him, as one of the soldiers says the general has a point. Then, they decide to rally behind General Caesar, chanting together, saying, follow the general. After that, Caesar mockingly calls Rain, and asks with a smile if he has any last words to say before he dies. In response, Rain says if they mend their ways, he will give them a chance to turn over a new leaf. It's a pity. Right then, Caesar furiously shouts orders at his troops to obey the command and charge to kill him, as the soldiers all rush at Rain, aiming their weapons straight at him with killing intent. At that moment, Lee frustratedly says this skirt is really in the way, so she cuts off her skirt using her knife. Then she rushes at the soldier with a tremendous amount of force and starts cutting them down using her knife. A soldier comes close to hitting her in the face, but immediately Lee does a backflip to dodge his attack. She readjusts her knife midair and slices the soldier's neck before he could do anything about it. Then, as Lee lands on the ground, she gets startled to see a soldier managing to get close to Rain, telling him to go die. So, Lee shoots her knife straight at the soldier and throws him to the side before he could reach him. After that, Rain tells Caesar with a smile that this is his last chance, so not be too stubborn. However, Caesar furiously keeps telling all his soldiers to charge, and that whoever kills him will be rewarded with 1,000 gold coins. Immediately, all the remaining soldiers charge forward together toward Rain, aiming for the reward, shouting that the gold coins are theirs. At that same time, a soldier comes up behind Lee and tries to hit her with everything he has. But Lee quickly leans down and kicks him in the face, making him fall to the ground and unable to move for a while. Then, Lee goes up to the soldiers rushing toward Rain and knocks them out one after another by punching and kicking them in a matter of seconds. Seeing that, Caesar frustratedly tells the wizards to obey the order and knock that stinky dog down for him. The wizards tell him yes and then shoot a bunch of ice arrows, aiming at Lee, saying damn it. Lee hurriedly swings her leg at the ice arrows to break them midway, but some still hit her leg, and she frustratedly thinks she can't move. Seeing that, Caesar orders his troops to obey the command. He shouts that dog can't move anymore, so to kill Rain Edgar immediately. Then, the rest of the soldiers start rushing toward Rain and Lee with everything they have, shouting kill. At that moment, Rain tosses a hammer at Lee, telling her to find a way to jump into the air immediately, as he holds a battery wire in one hand. Lee grabs the hammer and says yes, Master Rain. Then, she hurriedly breaks the ice holding her legs and jumps up as Rain told him. Immediately, Rain lets go of the battery wire in his hand, saying just in time for him to try out the power of this thing. As soon as the wire falls on the ground, it sends out powerful currents through the ground and electrifies the soldiers coming at him. They find it really hurting and are unable to move, while Rain stands there unscathed on some pieces of the broken ceramic pots, thinking fortunately the ceramics were broken. Seeing the soldiers get electrocuted so badly, the rest of the soldiers standing behind worriedly ask what's going on, if it's thunder magic. Rain says it'd be great if there was a video recorder. He could record this scene as a warning video for production safety in the future. It'll remind workers to use electricity safely. Then, Caesar frustratedly asks his soldiers damn it, why they stopped, and tells them to keep charging, to kill them. But one of the soldiers tremblingly tells the general not good. Master Rain must have used forbidden magic. Everyone who comes close to him will die. Right then, Caesar swings his sword at him and cuts off his head from his body in an instant. He says with a terrifying look on his face that anyone who revolts within the troops will be killed. After that, Caesar furiously orders the rest of the soldiers to charge over immediately, as he's just one person, and he doesn't believe he can kill them all. At that, the soldiers step forward worriedly, but as they get to the soldiers who are electrocuted, they find they are not getting electrocuted, so they surprisedly wonder what's going on. Seeing that, Lee confusedly asks Rain why these soldiers weren't knocked down by his magic, and Rain says it must have run out of power. After all, he brought a battery to test out its power. Hearing that, Lee tells him that then she'll take him out of there immediately, but Rain tells her not to worry, Caesar can't get away that day. Then, Caesar orders his soldiers to chase after them immediately, as Rain Edgar's magic seems to have failed, so he roars at them to kill. Right at that moment, a powerful lightning strikes down on the ground in front of them, and Caesar frightenedly wonders how this is possible. Why the Wizards Guild is there. While Selena looks at him with a frightening look in her eyes, calling him a boy and tells him that he's quite bold. She calls Rain young master and tells him that she should have arrived just in time, while several other wizards from the guild show up behind her. Rain tells her, just in time, as the battery just ran out of power. Hearing that, Selena excitedly asks if he used the battery, and how the effect was. Rain looks at the rebels, telling Selena that after they catch Caesar and the others, he'll tell her everything in detail, and Selena tells him she got it. Then, she orders all the magicians to listen up and assist Master Rain in destroying the rebels. The magicians say yes, as they chain together their lightning magic and throw it straight at the rebel soldiers, which severely hurts them, and they beg them to spare them. Then, the soldiers run away from there screaming for help, saying they were wrong, and to spare their lives, as they won't dare to do it again. Seeing that, Caesar frustratedly tells Rain Edgar that even if he dies, he'll drag him down with him. After that, he rushes forward with everything he has, dodging the thunder strikes coming at him. Then he lunges at Rain, furiously telling him to go to hell, and swinging his sword at him, using his magic. But at the last moment, Lee stands in front of Rain and manages to block his attack using her knife. As Caesar can't budge Lee at all, he frustratedly thinks that maid got close to him. Then, as Lee raises one of her feet, Caesar worriedly thinks not good, and before he could think of anything, Lee kicks him straight in the face and throws him straight at the border guard outpost, causing him to hit to back against the wall and break it. After that, Caesar remains seated on the ground, unconscious, and looking at him, Lee infuriatedly calls gross. Some time later, Caesar opens his eyes and finds Rain sitting in front of him, looking at some documents. Then, Rain notices him and asks if he woke up, but Caesar doesn't say anything in response. Rain says that as border guard officers, they have been stealing money in recent years, so he asks when they started working with Eldrick. Caesar gets shocked to hear that and asks how he knew, to which Rain tells him not to be so surprised. He explains he knew that Eldrick was going to betray them, it's just that he has been waiting for an opportunity, a chance to take him down in one fell swoop. He holds some accounts beside him with his hand and tells Caesar that thanks to him, he finally got what he wanted. At that, Caesar dismissively asks what he thinks he can do to Lord Eldrick with that little bit of corruption evidence he has. Rain tells him no, he has misunderstood. These accounts pose no threat to him. He just knows the approximate annual business tax figures of Eastland City through these accounts. This'll be a great reference for him in transforming Eastland City in the future, to which Caesar laughs and asks if he's dreaming. As Lord Eldrick controls the lifeblood of all the nobles in Eastland City, they won't listen to him. Then, Rain hands the document with him to Lee and walks up to Caesar Halker, telling him to let him tell him something. He explains that the living people are called nobles, and dead people are called corpses. Hearing that, Caesar gets terrified and asks if he wants to massacre the nobles of Eastland City. At that, Rain says with a cunning smile that the nobles of Eastland City have two choices. First, they'll walk the same path to their death as he will. Or second, they must listen to him and work for him in the future. He asks Caesar which one he thinks they'll choose. After that, Rain heads out, thinking that it should be almost autumn now, and Grand Duke Soren will definitely send troops again this year. He looks at the city wall and understands that it must be repaired quickly, otherwise, once war breaks out, the city wall will not be able to stop any enemy. Then, he puts down a map and thinks that the west side is the territory of the Saint Lady and her elves, so as long as the negotiations are successful, there will be no war. To the east is his second sister's territory, so there is no need to worry, and the most dangerous person is Grand Duke Soren in the north. Right then, Lee comes up to him and informs him that the extorted money from the entire border fortress has been sorted out, and it is about 350,000 gold. Rain says they should bring guards to take over the defense there first. He tells Lee to give each person 100 gold coins, put the rest on the carriage and take them back to Eastland City, to which Lee says yes. Then, Rain notices Miss Selena getting on the carriage, so he calls her and walks up to her, which surprises her. Rain thanks her and the Wizards Guild for their hard work this time, and Selena gladly tells him it wasn't hard at all. But she shows him the battery wire and asks if he can explain to her in detail the principle of battery discharge, as how can someone who has no magic power at all use it? Rain nervously says okay. He'll explain it to her slowly on the way back, and Selena excitedly says okay then. But before she could finish her sentence, Malcolm comes running at them, calling both Rain and Selena. Seeing him so worried, Selena says she's fine and asks what happened. She tells him to tell her now. Malcolm hurriedly informs Rain that the city Lord Eldrick has rebelled against the city, which shocks Selena as she asks what. Hearing the news, Rain thinks with a smile if Eldrick can't help it. Then Selena worriedly asks him what she can do. In order to suppress the border guards, she brought out all the magicians in the guild, so there's no one in Eastland City to help them out from the inside. But Rain tells her not to worry, as the moment Eldrick took over the city and rebelled, he has already lost. After that, Rain goes to the Eastland City gate along with the troops he has with him and announces to Eldrick he has been concerned by him. Looking at him, Eldrick asks with a devilish smile if this isn't Master Rain, and asks what the matter is with coming to Eastland City that day. Then Rain asks him why he betrayed his father, and Eldrick infuriatedly asks if he's asking why, as it's just because he dumped him in this god-forsaken place. He explains that his father and he built the empire together, and as a result, after his father became the Great Lord, not only did he not give him the treatment he deserved, instead, they dumped him and his family into this remote wasteland. Eldrick says he wrote to him many times, hoping that he would transfer him to a more prosperous place, but he was rejected in the end. So Eldrick furiously tells Rain that this is all his father's fault. If he wants to blame someone, to blame him for being ruthless and ungrateful. He adds that these people are the ones who fought with his father to conquer the world, but in the end, they didn't get the treatment they deserved, as other nobles walk up behind him. So Eldrick excitedly tells Rain that they're not rebelling, it's about taking back what they've won. After hearing all that, Rain says he thought they had some noble reason, but he disappointedly tells them that the result is the most boring conflict of interest. Then he tells them that he'll give them a chance, if they want to live, to leave the city and surrender immediately. But if they wait until he captures the city in 3 days, not to blame him for being ruthless. Hearing that, the nobles amusedly ask if he's saying within 3 days, as they ask if he knows how long it'll take them to break into the city of Iselin, and laugh. Eldrick also laughs at Rain and asks if he's scared silly, and another noble says what a fool who's all talk and no action. Then Eldrick asks with an evil look on his face if he's so confident, if he dares to make a bet with him. Rain asks what the bet is. Eldrick excitedly asks him if he fails to break through the walls of the city of Iselin within 3 days, how about he just surrenders and let him do whatever he wants. Rain asks what if he broke through. At that, Eldrick laughs and says if he breaks through, then he'll let him do whatever he wants. He provokingly calls him Rain Edgar and asks what if he dares to accept his bet. Selena tells Rain that there's no need to listen to Eldrick's provoking, they can fight slowly. And Lee tells Rain that he has reported Eldrick's rebellion to the Grand Duke. They just need to wait for him to send troops and wipe out the rebellion. There's no need to make such a fearless bet with him. Then, Eldrick asks why Master Rain is silent. If he's scared, he says he must be scared. Just now, he was talking about taking the city in 3 days. Now he's just acting like a coward, and laughs. He tells Rain if he has the guts, just to accept the bet, and asks why he's so cowardly. Rain tells him since he wants to humiliate himself, he'll satisfy him. He accepts this bet, and hopes he keeps his promise after 3 days. Eldrick says alright, they should bear witness that day, and they should make it a deal. Then, he tells Rain that he almost forgot to tell him something. He lets him know that the army of the Orvis Empire has received news of rebellion, and their army will probably reach the border fortress in 10 days. So Eldrick mockingly calls him Master Rain, requesting him not to get captured by the enemy country, and laughs. Some time later, at Rain's temporary war tent, Selena warns Rain that although the walls of Iselin City look dilapidated, it is still difficult to break through with just their small number of people. A captain tells Rain that they should take him to escape from the south. When the Grand Duke's army is coming, they should attack the city of Iselin. But Rain tells them not to worry, the wall of Iselin will be broken in 3 days. What he's worried about now is the army of the Orvis Empire, as he puts some pieces representing different troops on the war map. Rain asks Lee if the firewood and the firewood she collected are enough, to which Lee tells her that everything is ready. Also, they have found a lake nearby as he requested. Then Rain tells Selena, as he said, to let the magicians use ice magic in the lake, as it is necessary to lower the temperature of the water in the lake, preferably to around 0 degrees. Hearing all that, Selena confusedly asks if these things really can break through the walls of Iselin City. Rain tells her with a smile not to worry, the walls of Iselin will only last for 3 days at most. The next day, in the morning, Rain goes in front of the city wall, and orders his soldiers to go, as they start charging toward the wall. The soldiers rush forward, holding firewood in one hand and a shield in another. They raise their shields to save themselves from the arrows of the archers under Eldrick. Seeing that, Eldrick confusedly wonders if these people are attacking the city without weapons, and why they have firewood. Meanwhile, the soldiers drop the firewood in front of the city wall, and run back, confusedly wondering if they just have to throw away the firewood and leave. Then Eldrick asks one of his archers what is going on, if he has even encountered this when he was defending the city. The archer nervously says, to reply to him, they haven't seen it either, maybe they want to set fire to the city wall. Immediately, Eldrick punches him in the face, furiously asking if they're setting fire to the stones. He tells him to listen to himself, as he asks if he's speaking human language. But the archer tells him that he really can't think of anything else, while he rubs the part of his face where he got hit. Hearing that, Eldrick gets even more furious at him. Right then, another archer worriedly tells him that there's a fire. They really are planning to set the walls on fire. At the same time, the soldiers under Rain, who are busy stacking the hay balls in front of the city wall, confusedly ask if they're really going to use fire to burn the stones. Seeing that, Eldrick amusedly says this young master is really a fool, and starts laughing out loud. At that moment, one of his soldiers asks him if they should ask their magicians to put out the fire, or if they should shoot the soldiers who are carrying the firewood with arrows. Eldrick tells him no need, the magicians they borrowed from the Orvis Empire can only take action at the most critical moment. So he says they can't waste magic power in a place like this, and also, he orders the soldiers to not waste their arrows on the people carrying firewood. Eldrick excitedly says, 3 days later, He will humiliate Rain on this city wall, and continues laughing like a maniac, while the fires in front of the city wall keep increasing. 3 days later, at the city lord's mansion, a servant comes up to Eldrick to report about the situation, and Eldrick tells him to report. The servant tells him it seems that the other side doesn't intend to continue setting fire. Hearing that, Eldrick amusedly asks if they have burned all the firewood for the winter and laughs out loud. He tells everyone to come with him to witness the foolish young master surrender to him, and the others excitedly say that's right. That day is the last day for the bet between Lord Eldrick and Master Rain. So Lord Eldrick must have won, one adds, saying yes, the city wall is so hot right now, let alone attacking it, it's even uncomfortable to get close to it. After that, Eldrick and the others head to the city wall and find Rain standing outside with his troops, so Eldrick asks if he's planning to put out the fire and then surrender. However, Rain tells Eldrick and all of the nobles that he'll give them one last chance to surrender now or die. At that, Eldrick amusedly asks if he's out of his mind, why he thinks they'll surrender if he's forgotten the bet they made 3 days ago, as that day is the last day of the bet. He tells Rain that if he fails to capture the city of Iselin before sunset that day, he must surrender, or he asks if he wants to deny his debt in front of the soldiers of both armies. The other nobles behind Eldrick laugh and tell Rain yes, he should think about how to break into the city, as if it isn't right that he won't default on his debt. Hearing that, Rain annoyedly tells them, in that case, not to blame him, and tells Selena to do it while she's flying above the city wall. Selena tells him that she got it, calling him young master, as she starts charging up her thunder magic. And seeing that, Eldrick hurriedly tells the magicians to be on guard. As soon as Selena finishes charging up her thunder magic, she throws it toward the wall with a tremendous amount of force. The magicians under Eldrick quickly manage to put up a magic barrier above them to defend themselves from the thunder strike. But then, the powerful thunder strike falls outside the city wall, which confused both Eldrick and the magicians. Then Eldrick starts laughing, saying he's dying of laughter, it can actually be split crooked. He can't believe that Selena from the Wizards Guild is like this. But then, he gets startled to find a drop of water fall on his face, so he looks up at the sky and confusedly asks if it's raining. After that, Rain shouts at all of his troops to listen to orders and attack, as the soldiers all start rushing toward the city wall with shields in one hand and buckets of icy water in another. At the time, Selena seems completely exhausted from using the powerful thunder magic, so Rain thanks her very much, while he and Lee help her stand straight. Rain thinks he didn't expect that she could actually cause weather changes. Now they have a way to deal with drought in the future. Then Selena asks if his method really works. Rain tells her not to worry, as the moment the ice water hits the city wall of Iselin will no longer exist. Right then, Lee tells him to look, as the soldiers keep throwing the ice water on the city wall, which has been burning for 3 days. In a matter of seconds, it starts to crack. Before Eldrick and the others under him could realize what's happening, the crack starts to widen. Seeing that, Eldrick worriedly wonders what's going on, why this city wall is making such a noise, as if this isn't something that can only be done with super large magic. The other nobles behind him worriedly ask what is going on, what that sound is. One says the city wall seems to be collapsing, but Eldrick asks what nonsense, how it is possible. Right at that moment, the city wall under their feet does indeed collapse, which shocks Eldrick, and he, along with the other nobles, comes crashing to the ground, screaming no. Immediately, Rain points at the wall, shouting it has been breached, and calls for an all-out attack. He orders his soldiers that those who surrender and do not resist will be arrested, and if anyone still resists, he will be killed immediately. Right then, the soldiers start rushing toward the broken city wall with their weapons and shields, roaring yes, go ahead. Looking at the wall, Selena surprisedly wonders if it actually collapsed. As this level of damage, she's afraid even her full strength attack would be difficult to deal this. So she wonders how young master did it. Then, Rain calls her Miss Selena and tells her okay, they should go home. Meanwhile, at the wreckage of the city wall, Eldrick somehow frees himself and frustratedly thinks he never thought he was so capable. He underestimated him, so he has to run away. As long as he can wait until the Orvis Empire army arrives from the north, he'll definitely survive. But then, Eldrick gets startled to find some people coming up to him and worriedly asks who they are. He looks ahead and finds that it's the nobles who are under him, as they seem furious at him and ask where he's going. If it isn't right that he doesn't want to escape, as they tell him that they don't want to die, so they have to inconvenience him. Sometime later, as Rain enters the city along with his troops, the citizens of Iselin gather at the side of the streets to welcome him, saying Master Rain is so awesome. Some excitedly say that right, such a strong city wall was breached in 3 days. Also, apart from a few idiots who sprained their feet while moving things, they had no casualties at all. At the same time, Selena goes up to Rain and requests, saying she's begging him to tell her how he did it. Selena keeps on begging him as Rain doesn't respond, so he frustratedly thinks it looks like if he doesn't provide an explanation, she won't enter the city. Then he tells her that this is based on the principle of thermal expansion and contraction of physics. Selena asks what it is, and Rain explains that it refers to the characteristics that an object expands when heated and shrinks when cooled, based on the law that the motion state of particles inside an object changes with temperature. When the temperature rises, the vibration of particles increases, causing the object to expand, and when the temperature drops, vibration decreases, causing the object to shrink. Then, Rain tells Selena that he'll tell her the rest after they deal with that idiot Eldrick. After a while, Rain reaches the wreckage of the city wall, and gets surprised to find a noble calling him Master Rain and telling him to save him. At that, Rain asks if he's trying to play a trick on him. Then the noble walks out of the rubble, helplessly calling him. The noble tries to explain to him that he was tricked by Eldrick before he betrayed him. Another noble tells Rain that's right, they wanted to capture Eldrick and atone for their crimes, but unexpectedly, he plotted against them, while the previous noble cries. Then, Rain infuriatedly tells the two of them that he gave them opportunities, but it's a pity that they didn't take advantage of them. At that, one of the nobles desperately tells him that they are willing to hand over their family property. They just ask him to spare their lives. But Rain tells them with a devilish grin on his face that if he kills them, their family property will still be his. Hearing that, the nobles start trembling in fear and tell him that no one will be loyal to him after he does this, as this is tyranny. However, Rain tells them they're wrong. People won't be loyal to anyone. People will only be loyal to their interests. They've lived for so long and still haven't figured this out. Then, he orders his soldiers to arrest these idiots and tells the nobles to wait to be punished. The soldiers say yes. Meanwhile, at the Eldrick's mansion, Eldrick hurriedly tells the masked man from Orvis Empire to run, as Rain really broke through the wall. The masked man gets shocked to hear that, as he worriedly asks Eldrick how he did it. Eldrick tells him it seems like the city wall was set on fire for a few days, then poured with water, and the wall collapsed. Hearing that, the masked man furiously asks what nonsense he's talking about there, how there can be such a simple way to siege a city. But Eldrick tries to him that it's true. The masked man frustratedly says there's absolutely no such simple way to siege a city in the world, so he must have used some powerful magic. However, Eldrick terrifiedly tells him that whatever it is, they have to run, as when Rain comes in with his soldiers later, it'll be impossible for them to escape. Hearing that, the masked man immediately takes out a scroll, and prepares to escape with Eldrick. But right then, Rain arrives there and says, "Oh my," which startles them. Then he asks them with a smile if they're planning to go. Seeing him there, Eldrick worriedly asks how he got there so quickly, and Rain tells him this is all thanks to him directly abandoning the city wall, and trying to escape. He explains that the soldiers who were following him dropped their weapons when they saw him running away. They no longer resisted, so there was no one to stop him along the way. Then Rain looks at the masked man and asks if he's the person behind Eldrick, and if he wears a mask because he's ugly or because he has scars on his face. The masked man calls him Rain Edgar and tells him that he won't be able to be so proud in a few days, as the army of the Orvis Empire is already on its way. He furiously adds that originally, if he hadn't destroyed the city wall of Iselin, he could have lived a few more days, but now he has destroyed it, so when the Orvis army arrives, they must take back all of that day's humiliation. Then, the masked man hurriedly opens the scroll and starts preparing to teleport from there. Immediately, Rain tells Lee to stop him. And then, in the blink of an eye, a knife comes flying at the masked man's face, which hits his mask and breaks it to pieces. After the knife bounces off of the mask, it goes and sticks on a wall beside him, and a man from Orvis Empire's face finally gets unmasked. Then, Lee shows up beside Rain, and seeing her, the man from Orvis Empire surprisedly asks if it's actually her. However, at that moment, he completes the spell for teleportation and escapes the place with Eldrick, furiously yelling that Rain Edgar, he'll definitely be back. After that, Lee apologizes to Rain as it's all her fault that she was too slow to take action and let him get away, to which Rain tells her not to worry, as he was sure they'd leave a way out. He annoyedly adds it's just that not knowing the other party's identity is a troublesome thing. However, Lee tells him that she knows that man. Rain gets surprised to hear that and asks if he's an acquaintance of hers. Lee tells him no, not that close. The man's name was Ravenclaw Eldwin, and he was once a subordinate of the Grand Duke. Later, during the war, he betrayed the Grand Duke and defected to Sorin of the enemy country. Hearing that, Rain gets thoughtful as he asks if he's also called Eldwin, so if he could be related to the Adrian who was executed not long ago. Lee tells him that's right. Originally, he was the leader of the Eldwin family, but he didn't agree with the master's ideas, so he voluntarily left the Eldwin family and joined the enemy's Grand Duke Sorin. To which Rain says he understands. Right then, Selena arrives there and tells him that the situation is under control. But she worriedly asks what about the Orvis Empire's army, as even if all the magicians from the guild went to repair the city wall together, she's afraid it'd be too late, as his magic of thermal expansion and contraction caused too much damage. However, Rain tells her with a confident look on his face not to worry about this, as he'll naturally find a way to solve it. After that, he heads out to address the citizens, and Selena thinks the little young master definitely wants to appease the people, but she confusedly wonders what he will say to prevent them from falling into panic. However, at that moment, Rain brings out a megaphone and loudly calls the citizens, asking if they can hear him, which hurts Selena's ears. Rain announces to the citizens that he has something to say. The army of the Orvis Empire is marching towards them, and they'll be there in a few days. He asks if they hear that clearly. The citizens of Iselin get terrified to hear that and ask what, an army, as they all fall into a disarray. And at that, Selena furiously calls Rain little young master and asks what he's doing. The citizens discuss among themselves, worriedly asking what, if the Orvis Empire's army is attacking them again. If it didn't end in spring, so why they're coming again. One of the citizens tells the others to take their valuables and run away, but another citizen says he has been living a good life under the command of Master Rain. Meanwhile, Selena tells Rain that he's too impulsive, as he can't tell the people these things. Rain asks why. Selena explains that when people hear that someone is coming to attack, they will instinctively think of relying on the army to protect them. They haven't received formal military training, and it's difficult for them to remain calm in the face of danger. However, Rain tells her that she misunderstood something. He explains that the person who needs to be calm the most on the battlefield is the commander, and the people who need to calm down the least are the soldiers. Selena surprisedly asks what. Then Rain shows a letter to the citizens and tells them that this is the letter of challenge sent to him by the Orvis Empire. It says that the entire city of Iselin are cowards and fools who don't dare to defend their homes, that they'll abandon him and escape. Hearing that, the citizens furiously ask what, how dare these bastards say that about them? They come to rob them of food every year, so they won't leave this year. They'll fight with their grandsons. Rain adds that it seems like the Orvis Empire doesn't know them at all, and asks the citizens if it isn't right that they aren't cowards or fools. In response, the citizens of Iselin City roaringly yells that's right, they'll fight them. They start riling up, furiously saying yes, they won't lose anything by exchanging 1 for 1. But they'll gain blood by exchanging 1 for 2. Rain tells them great, since everyone has the courage to fight. Then he, Rain Edgar, swears that he will lead them to drive the Orvis Empire's army out of their land, which excites the citizens. That night, at the Iselin City Lord's Manor, while Rain is busy going through some potentially important documents, Lee comes and requests him with a smile to have a cup of tea and take a rest, which surprises Rain. He accepts it, but tells her there's no time to rest, as they must find a solution before the Orvis Empire arrives. Otherwise, the entire city of Iselin will be captured by them. Then, Lee asks about what he said during the day, and Rain explains that that was a lie to stabilize the people of Iselin City. As if the people fell into panic, let alone defend the city, even an ordinary evacuation would be difficult to achieve, and people will do anything in panic. Hearing that, Lee worriedly tells him to let her take him out of Iselin City now, as she can't just watch him be in danger. But Rain tells her not to worry. He has already asked Malcolm and Selena to take the children, elderly and women in the city to evacuate in an orderly manner, so it's not time to give up yet. Right then, he gets surprised to find a book with dark green divine oil written on it, and wonders if this thing is serious. He'll ask Lee. So he asks Lee if she knows what this dark green divine oil is, and Lee replies that she remembers it was something that could burn. It seems to be some kind of material used in witches' rituals. Hearing that, Rain recalls that the color of petroleum is very rich, ranging from deep red, golden, dark green, black, brown, transparent. He understands that the color of petroleum is determined by the content of gum and asphaltene it contains. The higher the content, the darker the color, so oil that could burn. He wonders if it could be what he thinks. So then, Rain gets up from his desk and tells Lee to take him to see it quickly. The account book says there is this thing in the warehouse, which startles her. After that, Rain heads to the warehouse along with Lee and orders the guards to open the warehouse door. The guards say yes, yes, and open the door for him. Then Rain heads inside and orders the guards to go find that thing called dark green divine oil. Also, he tells them to remember not to use an open flame, and if they're not sure, then to move it out, as it should be in a barrel. The guards tell him yes, and get to finding it. Then Rain sees chests filled with gold coins there and thinks, as he thought, the tax revenue of Eastland City has been embezzled by Eldrick over the years. So when this crisis is over, they must immediately use this money to develop the industry, as long as a steam engine can be built. Right then, the guards bring out the barrels of the green oil and tell Rain that they've found it. Hearing that, Rain hurriedly rushes up to them, saying he's coming, which startles the guards. Rain opens the lid of one of the barrels and finds that it actually is what he was guessing, so he excitedly thinks Eastland City can be saved. Meanwhile, at the Orvis Empire military camp, Ravenclaw apologizes to Lord Castile, as they failed. At that, Castile says he knew the two of them would fail, but he didn't expect them to be such wastes. As the Grand Duke of the Orvis Empire, Castile Waldron infuriatedly states that a city was lost in 3 days. Eldrick worriedly tells him that Rain Edgar used a forbidden spell to destroy the city wall, which caused their failure. Otherwise, they would have definitely been able to hold on until they arrived at Eastland City. Castile seems surprised by that and asks if it could be that in order to protect his youngest son, Aldarion sent a forbidden spell mage. But Ravenclaw tells him not to worry, as forbidden spell mages are unable to use the forbidden spells continuously. Moreover, the walls of Iselin have been destroyed, so now's definitely a good time to attack. Castile tells him no need for him to remind him, as this Duke is not an incompetent person like him, and there's nothing else for him to do there. He can go back to the Orvis Empire and wait for news. At that, Ravenclaw tells him that the two of them planned this matter together, so he worriedly asks what he means by this. Lord Castile tells Ravenclaw Eldwin this means that he has been kicked out, and tosses an official letter at him. Ravenclaw picks it up and finds that it says the war started because of his personal vendetta, but the Lord has always aspired for peace, so he has ordered Ravenclaw to be captured and delivered to pay for his crimes. After reading it, Ravenclaw furiously calls him a bastard, and Castile orders the soldiers to capture this man and imprison him until the war is over. 2 soldiers immediately grab him, saying yes, then they drag him out of the tent while Ravenclaw screams at Castile, no, he can't do this, and calls Eldrick for help. But Eldrick stands there trembling in fear, as Castile asks what he thinks he should do with him. Eldrick desperately begs him to spare his life, and tells him that he knows a secret. It can take them further in the Eastland City. A few days later, at the Thrand Castle Hall, while Priscilla Edgar, sister of Rain Edgar and Lord of Thrand, is busy going through some documents. Her assistant enters the room and hands her a letter telling her that the letter from Master Rain was written by Lee Alice. Hearing that, Priscilla wonders how Rain is doing, as she should go visit his territory when she has time. But as soon as she checks the letter, she gets furious and calls someone stupid. She orders her assistant Gwen to get that bastard Willis Halker there for her right now, and Gwen tells her yes. After that, Willis hurriedly comes to Priscilla and sits on his knees, asking what happened. Priscilla infuriatedly tells Willis that he's so brave, as she asks how dare he rebel. Willis gets shocked to hear that and asks how this is possible, how she can believe such a crude lie, if they didn't open up a trade channel with her help last month, so they have no reason. But Priscilla throws the letter at his face, furiously telling him that the evidence is irrefutable. He still dares to quibble, so to see for himself. Then, Willis reads the letter informing that Lord Eldrick and the Grand Duke of Castile of the Orvis Empire attempted to rebel, and colluded with many nobles of Iselin, including General Caesar Halker. Caesar has been captured and eliminated, but Lee requests Priscilla to be careful of other people in the Halker family. At that, Willis starts sweating heavily, and thinks what? Then, Priscilla asks him with a scary look on her face if he has anything else to say. Willis desperately tells her that this is Caesar's stupid behavior, and it has nothing to do with the Halker family. Then he remembers and tells her, yes, he wrote to that idiot Caesar the previous month. The letter told him to listen carefully to Master Rain's words, so he requests Priscilla to make a wise decision. After hearing him out, Priscilla thinks his actions and reactions don't seem fake, so she wonders if it could really be Caesar's idea alone. After that, Willis requests her to give the Halker family a chance, as they will prove their loyalty, and Priscilla asks what opportunity he wants. Willis suggests that he lets his only daughter lead the army to help Master Rain fight against the army of the Orvis Empire. Priscilla asks if he's talking about Rosalind. If she isn't just an adult, she hasn't finished her course at the Knight Academy yet, and if anything happens, his family will be left without successors. However, Willis requests her to rest assured, as his Halker family is willing to give everything for the eldest lady. Without her, their family would have ceased to exist, so he begs her to give them a chance to prove their loyalty. Then, Priscilla agrees to take his offer and gestures to Gwen, telling her to send someone to keep an eye on Rosalind, and if she does anything wrong, to kill her immediately. In the meantime, on the outskirts of Iselin City, Castile stands on a cliff towering beside the city and asks Eldrick if this is the city of Iselin. Eldrick tells him that's right. As long as he breaks through there, the city of Iselin will belong to him. But he also tells him it seems that Rain used magic to urgently repair the city wall, as the city wall was even worse before than it is now, and it seems like another moat has been built. Hearing that, Castile laughs and says it looks like this Rain is an idiot, as they actually wasted the magician's precious magic power to repair the city wall. Eldrick tells him that they have repaired the city wall, so it'll be more difficult for them to fight, so he confusedly asks why he's so happy. Castile explains if the terrain is easy to defend but difficult to attack, it would be useful for him to build a wall. But this area is plain, with only a river in the middle, which can't stop the army from rushing. He adds that, if the magicians have magic power, they can stop their army from rushing. But if all the magician's energy is wasted on building the city wall, they'll lose their effectiveness when attacking the city because they have no magic power. Hearing all that, Eldrick kneels before him and excitedly tells him he understands. Lord Castile is indeed very wise. Then a soldier tells Castile that if they want to capture the city of Iselin, they don't have to storm this fortress. They can send troops to surround it, and then they can go straight to the city of Iselin and isolate this fortress. But at that, Castile irritatedly asks what he means, if he thinks this duke can't take this fortress. Immediately, the soldier gets on his knees and tells Lord Castile that he has misunderstood. He thinks this can reduce their casualties. After all, it is a siege. Castile tells him that there's no such thing as a war without casualties. Besides, some of the troops they brought this time are new recruits, so they can use this city to practice, which worries the soldier. Then Castile flies toward Iselin, telling a wizard to come with him. They should go and show the young master on the other side his power. Maybe he'll surrender the moment he sees this duke. The wizard says yes. Meanwhile, at Rain's office, he frustratedly looks at the quest for the cultivation of 5 high-attribute characters, as the progress is still at 0. He understands he doesn't have time to find anyone, and this task has been stuck for half a month, so he has to think of a solution quickly. Right then, Lee comes up to him and tells him that the Grand Duke of Castile of the Orvis Empire is outside the city with a magician and wants to see him. After that, Rain goes to the city wall along with Lee, where soldiers are already stationed and see him. Then, Rain looks up as Castile calls him and announces to him that the Duke is giving him a chance now. Hearing that, Rain asks his soldiers if this fool could be the Grand Duke of Castile, and the soldiers start laughing out loud. Lee tells Rain that's right, this fool is the Grand Duke of Castile. At that, Castile furiously calls Rain a bastard and asks how dare he disrespect him like this, as even his father wouldn't dare to look down on him like that when he saw him. Then, Rain calls him Grand Duke of Castile, and carefreely asks what brings him there. Castile shouts at him, telling him that this duke is there to give him a chance to beg for mercy. As long as he surrenders now, this duke will not let blood flow there. However, Rain tells him that he'll give him a chance too, if he doesn't want to die there, to lead his army back to his own territory immediately. Hearing that, Castile tells him that it seems like he doesn't really know what's good for him. The Duke personally led an army of 100,000 to the city, so if he doesn't want to die, to surrender immediately. Then, Rain tells Lee to teach him a lesson. Immediately, Lee raises her skirt, takes out a knife placed beside her leg, and shoots it straight at Castile. Castile gets startled by that, but the wizard that came with him hurriedly gets in front of him, telling him to be careful. He hastily puts up a barrier to block the knife, but the knife easily breaks through the barrier and barely scrapes his face. Then the wizard worriedly asks him how he is, while Castile is fuming with anger and says, hateful. At that moment, Rain calls him and tells him that this is a warning. Next time, his maid won't miss her target. After that, Castile orders the wizard to go and the wizard says yes as they head back to their army. Then, Rain tells Selena to prepare for battle as they are about to attack the city, and Selena tells him yes. A while later, Castile and the wizard reach the cliff where Castile's soldiers were standing, and a captain says he has come back. Seeing Lord Castile really furious, the captain worriedly asks what's wrong with him. Castile frustratedly says that he was plotted against by that despicable Rain, so he tells the captain to organize an attack on the city immediately, as he will tie him up and torture him severely that night. But the captain tells him that they have been running non-stop for 3 days to get to the border of Iselin City, so he asks if the siege can wait the next day, and let the soldiers rest for half a day. Hearing that, Castile hits him in the head, furiously calling him a bastard. He asks if they're tired after running for 3 days without sleep, if they're still soldiers of the Great Orbis Empire. However, the captain requests him to calm down, as even if the soldiers are not tired, they still need to build bridges and prepare siege equipment, so there's no need to rush. The other soldiers there also agree with him and tell Castile yes, but then Castile yells at them saying they don't know how to fight. He explains that since ancient times, speed is the most important thing in war. The other side must have thought that they would rest for a day before attacking the city. So if they suddenly attack the city now, they can catch them off guard. However, the soldiers still seem worried about his tactics. But Castile doesn't pay any heed to that and tells them to send his orders to attack the city immediately. Meanwhile, at the Imperial Barracks of Orbis, a soldier tells his friends that after running for 3 days and 3 nights, he finally arrived. He was almost dead from exhaustion. Another soldier says yes, and frustratedly asks which bastard told him that being a soldier isn't tiring. But another soldier asks them with a smile to guess what he just saw. His friend impatiently asks what he saw, and tells him to stop keeping them in suspense and tell them. Then the soldier excitedly tells the others that he saw them slaughtering a sheep, so they can have a good meal that night. One of his friends says holy trash and asks if really, and another says after running for 3 days and 3 nights, he can finally have a good meal. But right at that moment, a captain arrives at the barracks and tells all the members to assemble and prepare to attack the city, which surprises the soldiers as one asks if he said to attack the city. They go up to their boss and tell him that they've been running for 3 days and 3 nights, and now they have no energy at all, so they ask if they don't give them a full meal before a battle. But the captain shouts at them, telling them to stop talking nonsense. As a soldier, all they have to do is obey orders, so to prepare to attack the city now, to which the soldiers cry and say yes. Sometime later, the soldiers of the Orbis Empire reach in front of the Iselin city wall, and start rushing forward, shouting kill. Seeing that, one of Rain's soldiers asks when they release the arrows, as he and Rain stand on the city wall looking outside. But then, Rain gets surprised to find the enemy troops struggling to even cross the moat, so he asks his soldier if any of them have fought against armies of the Orbis Empire. The soldier replies to him that he once had the honor of fighting against the army of the Orbis Empire. Then Rain asks why their troops look like they haven't eaten, or if this is just the constitution of the people of the Orbis Empire. The soldier says in response to his words, that according to his experience, these should be new recruits, and they seem to be hungry. Rain gets confused to hear that and asks if they don't feed the attackers. The soldier says in response to his words, he has 2 inferences. One is that they may not have much food, so the soldiers are not full. The second is, the soldier stops mid-sentence as he seems a bit irritated. However, Rain tells him to go on. Then the soldier explains that the Grand Duke of Castile probably used these people as cannon fodder. Let them die to consume their city defense resources, such as arrows and the like. Rain gets shocked to hear that and frustratedly asks what if their emperor doesn't care if he does this, if those people aren't the people of the Orbis Empire. The soldier sadly tells him that there are very few lords who love their people like him and Grand Duke Aldarian, as most of them are people like the Grand Duke of Castile. Rain keeps thinking about the fact that Castile is using other people's lives as cannon fodder, and believes that then he should blame him for being ruthless. At that moment, the soldier informs him that they should have enough arrows to kill these new recruits, so he asks when he plans to release them. However, Rain tells him with a cunning smile on his face that they don't shoot arrows, which shocks the soldier. After that, Rain brings in Selena, who also gets surprised to see the Orbis Empire soldiers struggling to cross the moat outside the city gate. Then Rain tells her to have all the magicians use cold wind magic, and Selena tells him yes. Right at that moment, the new recruits rushing toward the Iselin city gate get startled to see Selena rise into the air above the city wall, as she charges up her magic and uses her frost wind basic magic spell, Dense Dark Clouds, which summons dark clouds in the sky and sends cold winds toward the enemy soldiers. Seeing that, Castile laughs and says this guy called Rain is really an idiot, to which a soldier asks why he says that. Castile explains that he sent out new recruits to launch a feint attack, hoping to use up his arrows, but this idiot wasted the magician's power to defend against them in order to save arrows. When their magicians run out of power, they'll send the magicians and the cavalry out to attack the city, so he asks if the entire city of Iselin wouldn't be easy to capture. Hearing that, the soldiers amazedly say Lord Castile is so smart, as expected of Lord Castile. He can come up with such a clever plan. While Castile imagines Rain on his knees before him and his hands tied up, as he excitedly thinks Rain Edgar will be his prisoner soon. Meanwhile, in front of the city wall, the soldiers of the Orvis Empire get worried seeing that wizards in the sky using their magic, and wonder what's going on. Then, as the soldiers feel the cold wind, they try to escape shouting run, the enemy is releasing magic. They call for help as they haven't married yet, and don't want to die. Some soldiers grab hold of a tree tightly and tell the wizards of Iselin that they're begging them. They request them not to chop them up. But then, as they find themselves unharmed, they confusedly ask what happened, if they didn't say there was magic. At that moment, their captain frustratedly asks what they're daydreaming about, and tells them to pick up their weapons and start charging. Then the soldiers of Orvis Empire get back to charging toward the wall of Iselin City, while Rain and his subordinates look at them. Selena asks Rain if this basic level of cold wind magic can really repel the enemy. How about they release some lighting magic? Rain tells her no need, as he explains that since ancient times, people have lost their fighting spirit, because of only two things, hunger and cold. And the soldiers of Orvis Empire couldn't even stand up straight, let alone attack the city. As they are shaking saying, so cold, they're freezing to death, and ask how it can be so cold. They add that they don't want to fight anymore, they want to go home. Right then, their captain shouts at them, furiously calling them a bunch of trash, and asks what they're doing. He orders them to attack the city, to take up arms and fight, but the soldiers cry and one tells him it's too cold. Their hands are frozen and they can't lift anything. Others agree with him, telling the captain, yes, they're hungry and cold, they have no energy at all, they should retreat as it's too cold. Then the captain tells a soldier on horse that he must immediately report the situation there to Lord Castile, and tells the rest of them to continue to attack. The soldier on horse says yes. Sometime later, at the barracks of the Orvis Kingdom soldiers, a soldier goes up to Lord Castile and tells him that it's news from the vanguard. Castile tells him to let him come in and speak, and the soldier tells him yes. Then the soldier from the vanguard that came to report enters the tent hurt and calls Lord Castile. However, he gets surprised to find the soldiers there eating and frustratedly wonders why they should be starving and freezing outside, while they're enjoying there. After that, the soldier tells Castile that the frontline attack is not going well. Rain used cold wind magic to hinder their attack. The soldiers are starving and cold and can't hold their weapons at all, so he implores him to order a temporary withdrawal of troops. Hearing that, Castile bashes the table in front of him, furiously calling him a bastard, and tells him they're a bunch of cowardly bastards. He infuriatedly says that they're not worthy of being a noble soldier of the Orvis Empire. The soldier gets on his knees, telling him that they're not afraid of death, but they really have no strength because they haven't eaten. At that, Castile orders others to kill this useless power who talks back to him. Then he says with a terrifying look on his face that he will lead the attack himself. Hearing that, a general hurriedly tells him that he doesn't have to risk his life, as they're willing to offer their lives for Castile. Lord Castile tells him with a smile that he has no objection to his loyalty. He just wants them generals to understand what a genius he, the Grand Duke Castile, is. After that, he heads to the front of the Iselin city wall along with his troops and orders all magicians to listen to him, to use earth magic to build a bridge so that the cavalry can pass through unimpeded. The magicians tell him yes and hurriedly use their earth magic to manipulate the earth to create a few bridges over the moat in a matter of seconds. After that, Castile orders all of his troops to charge, and announces to them that he will reward anyone who captures Rain Edgar alive. Immediately, all the soldiers of the Orvis Empire rush forward toward the city wall, shouting charge and kill, aiming to go over the bridge on the moat. Seeing that, one of Rain's soldiers tells Rain that it looks like the Orvis Empire is preparing to launch a formal attack. Then, Rain tells Lee in a serious tone to order that stuff to be dumped into the moat. and at the same time, to block all the passages on both sides of the moat, to which Lee tells him yes. After that, some soldiers of Iselin start pouring the green oil through a pipe that goes straight to the moat. So the oil continues getting dropped on the water of the moat, while soldiers of the Orvis Kingdom on horseback keep going over the bridge, heading toward the Iselin city gate shouting kill and charge.